Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto wrongly imprisoned. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. No, this can't be right. Maybe the messenger bird got the wrong message. Yamato muttered to himself as he read the scroll that a messenger bird had flown in. The small bird stared and flapped its wings at the pale Junin indignantly, as if it was insulted that it had made a mistake. The message itself was baffling enough, but Yamato had no chance but to follow the orders on it, as the message itself had the seal on the back of it from Tsunade that would remotely summon a slug, showing that it was not a fake. Your mission regarding Naruto Uzumaki is finished and the war is finished, yet have the war remain a secret from Naruto Uzumaki for the moment. Return home immediately with Naruto Uzumaki's chakra blocked and detained, regardless if he is making any headway with using the Kyuubi no Kitsun's power. Gondem Hokage, Tsunade Senju. With a sigh leaving his mouth, he turned towards the center of the eternally swimming island to break the news that they were ordered to return home, with one thought in his mind. How was he going to explain to Naruto about the way they were supposed to return? Was the eloquent reply of Naruto Uzumaki when he heard that they were supposed to return back with Yamato not omitting any point except for keeping the war a secret. Several thoughts raced through the blonde's mind, the forefront of them being, what about my S-rank mission? Will it count as a fail towards my record? Wait a second, I have to return with my chakra blocked and detained? Naruto tensed almost immediately after the thought of being detained passed through his mind and was digested thoroughly. Now, Naruto Uzumaki was in no way an imbecile. How could he create such effective battle plans and have incredible insight in battle if he was an imbecile? If he was, he would have been murdered in his first C-rank Gon rank mission. No, he understood people and he did it decently well. It only took him a few moments to process the words and figure them out, but he did understand. He only hid it unconsciously with his happy and boisterous personality. When he had thought about why people always underestimated, and he deduced that his personality was the culprit. After thinking about it, he remembered a part of the greatest ninja advice that the Sandaime Hokage had imparted to the blonde when he was younger. Don't underestimate anyone and you'll live a longer life as a result of it. Those words had stuck with Naruto, and even though he had forgotten them on occasion, he had never forgotten them entirely. Now, those same words flared in his mind like a bright red sign, and he stared at Yamato, studying his every movement. Even though the only people around him were teammates and comrades, when Yamato had repeated the words from the scroll he had received, everyone turned to stare at the blonde. As it was, Yamato had to try to defuse the situation and hope that he received help in defusing the situation before the blonde ran away or attacked. When Yamato was forced to detain him the hard way, Naruto-san. This came from an order from Hokage-sama herself. As much I dislike it, I don't want to have to be forced to do so, but orders are orders. Yo Naruto, just take the woodman's plans and follow them, yeah. Be rapt, reducing the tense atmosphere, and helped calm the blonde down enough to see reason in his words. Even if the rapping was terrible in everyone's opinion, Naruto nodded, and straightened his posture from the slightly hunched position he was in that was perfect for both running and being ready to either block or dodge an attack. Yamato shot a grateful look and walked towards Naruto with wood growing from the palm of his hands and wrapping around Naruto's outstretched hands as he uttered, Mokuton. Mokase Teiho, wood release. Wooden handcuffs. The pale Junin let out a relieved sigh. Alright. I believe that you're fine without leg restraints, so let's just go along with the handcuffs and go see what the fuss is about. Aoba, Motoi and Guy all nodded, being incredibly quiet throughout the dialogue shared between the trio until Guy spoke up in a serious tone they thought they wouldn't have to hear since Kisami's death 2 days ago. I wonder why Tsunade-sama wants Naruto-kun back detained. Everyone, including Naruto, thought along those lines, coming up with on singular thought. There was no reason for it to happen that they knew of. Time skip, 2 weeks, Tsunade's office. Oi, Tsunade Ba-chan, what's up with having me cuffed? Naruto's inquisitive voice rang out from the darkened room of the only to discover that Tsunade wasn't the only cage in the room. Sitting next to Tsunade was the Raikage, and the Tsuchikage, Onoki, whom were both staring at the blonde with a hard, unwavering glare as if he was responsible for something against the law. Naruto watched as Tsunade brought her gaze up from the ground and almost flinched at the sight that was held by them, something he didn't expect to see ever again from when he was younger. Her stare was filled with both utter and endless sorrow, and unadulterated rage at him, and it had instantly sent him reeling as if she had slugged him with one of her stronger punches across Konoha. Tsunade Ba-chan, what's wrong and why is two other Kage here? Naruto actually flinched this time when both Kages snarled at him in conjunction to Tsunade's sorrowful shake of her head. Onoki and I are here to exact a fitting punishment for you, along with myself, for the murder of several of their Junin that you had committed not 15 days ago. A pen dropped at that moment from Tsunade's desk, and the sound was the most deafening to Naruto's ears. He had murdered several Junin? 15 days ago? No, he was innocent. How could he have done so when he was in the middle of the ocean? After a few moments of shock running unfiltered from his system, Naruto thought it was a well-planned joke. Hey, this is a joke, right? Right, Tsunade Ba-chan? His face grew white when Tsunade's face seemed to lose the sorrow that was placed within them, and her face was filled with anger. This is no time for joking around, Naruto. You have been convicted of murder with several witnesses, including the use of trying to frame other shinobi in the process using the Henge no Jutsu transformation technique. Have you anything to say for your crimes? With each word that she had said, it dug a knife deeper and deeper into his heart. He numbly tried to protest, yet was savagely cut off by a "No, this little runt has no fucking excuse for murdering my shinobi when there are witnesses to him doing it and even fleeing when the henge fell off." In the corner of the room, both B and Yamato walked up on either side of Naruto with an expressive face, showing different emotions at once. This is not right at all. He was with us on the island the whole time. B protested with an outraged expression on his face, not even rapping for once when he usually rapped everything that came out of his mouth. Yamato nodded his head. I agree, Hokage-sama, Naruto was on the island with us the whole time. Motoi can even attest to this as he is a censor and made sure Naruto was on the island the entire time we were there. I think not. The rough, deep voice came from Onoki, who had been silent up till now. The brat could have just as easily sent some of his reinforced solid clones through the water during the fight against Kisame towards my own village and then sent the same clones to Kumogakure. Tsunade curtly nodded. Naruto, with the agreement of the Tsuchikage and the Raikage, you will be sent to Hazukijo, the blood prison, in Kusagakure for your crimes, the one prison that all 5 Kage both support and sanction, as all dangerous shinobi and kunoichi are sent there. She leveled her gaze towards Yamato purposefully, and he caught her meaning even if he did not want to follow through with it. He quickly detained the shell-shocked blonde with Mokuton, Shichoru, 4-pillar prison. A small wooden cage binded both his hands and legs in a locked position before Naruto could react to their words and whispered under his breath, I'm sorry, Naruto. Tsunade rose from her seat, and walked up to the blonde, staring at him intently before darting her hand out and snatching the Konoha Hite 8 from his forehead and slamming a paper with the kanji for seal on the wooden crate, directly made from Jiraiya before he died in case Naruto even lost control of Kyuubi's chakra. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but I can't do anything to get you out of this with 2 other Kage breathing down my neck. Take him away. Several Anbu appeared next to the wooden confines holding Naruto in place and exited the room with the blonde in tow with 5 low, quiet and meaningful words that were completely out of character for a normal Naruto hanging in the air that would haunt the occupants of the room, especially the 3 Kage, for a long time when they realized the full extent of what they had done. I didn't do it, Ba-chan. Unknown area. Kabuto, do you know anything regarding the Box of Ultimate Bliss, or as it is called now, the Box of Paradise? Madara's deep, low voice questioned the medic Nin standing next to him with a snake hissing inside the robe with a hood that he was wearing. Kabuto cocked his head to the side, wondering if the Uchiha Patriarch was serious in his question. The medic Nin decided to proceed with caution and act like it was a serious question. I have heard both rumors and myths about the Box of Paradise. About how it is fabled to grant any wish from the user that awakens it, but no one knows where it is, or even how to awaken the fabled box if they did have it in their possession. Madara let out a small, dark chuckle that made Kabuto's senses go haywire, with danger being the most prominent that was interpreted. The so-called fabled Box of Ultimate Bliss does, in fact, exist. By itself, it was nearly able to conquer the world by controlling what existed inside the box. Madara's voice caressed the words about the box. In fact, I know where the box exists right now, and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki will be used to awaken the box itself. Ah, but how are you going to get Naruto at the place where the box is hidden at? Kabuto asked, his curiosity winning over any warnings that his body attempted to tell him to flee and leave the madman alone. That will be no problem, as he is already going to be detained at the very place where it is hidden, Hazukijo. A smirk could be heard from his voice as he used Kamui, authority of the gods, to disappear into his own dimension, leaving a thoroughly interested Kabuto alone to his thoughts. So the box of paradise does exist. But why exactly did he need the Biju in the first place if he was going to go after the box? The medic Nin mused to himself. That also raises another question as to why Madara Uchiha wanted only one wave of the Edo Tensais. Maybe a distraction or a deflection to his true plan? Kabuto frowned to himself about not knowing Madara's true plan before walking away to his lab and letting a small smirk grow on his face as a thought hit him. Life will become very interesting in the coming months. 4 days later, boat to Hazukijo. The elongated rowboat rocked with the raging current, nearly colliding onto the large jagged rocks stretching out of the water and high into the water countless times, only for the rowers to regain control at the last second. On one of these boats was Naruto, currently embroiled in his own thoughts of who would want to frame him for murder and desperately trying to push away thoughts of his ba-chance glares that were staring down at with the authority of a god. Thankfully he had a reprieve from pushing those thoughts away when he heard several of the prisoners in the same boat as him mutter between each other. I've heard Hazukijo is impossible to break out of. No shit, dumbass. There's a reason it's sanctioned and even supported by the 5 cage. Another violently spat out, looking like the typical, shady, dealer type. The prisoner who had talked before then thankfully added, at least we don't have to worry about the war. This comment piqued Naruto's curiosity to no end. A war happening? Did Tsunade know about it, and if she did, why would she hide it? Only, when he attempted to ask, the prison head came into view from the hazy mist that surrounded the area. He stared at the large, imposing, walled prison with several large towers along with the outline of tiled roofs near the towers that looked almost like a large compound that one of the older clans would use for their high clan population. A shiver ran down his spine before determination calmed his body as one thought raced through his mind, completely missing the intent stare that one such prisoners were studying the blonde with. Get out and find the imposter. Attention! A large, rotund man dutifully stated with tinted glasses and the green uniform worn by all the guards with a red bar on each shoulder, a belt holding the shirt in place, green pants and black boots. The guards all surrounded the prisoners with the large, closing wooden gate at the prisoners' backs, with the 4 carrying Naruto's crate setting him down. The master of Hazukijo, Mui-sama, will now speak. Listen carefully. An opening between the guards occurred that a tall man, Mui, strode through from the stone confines of the prison. He himself was at least a head taller than the rotund man who announced Mui's presence. Mui wore a long black cape that covered his burgundy robes with yellow tassels off of his shoulders that went up to his neck and down to his feet that were concealed by his black boots. His face was wrinkled under his eyes that suggested a life of worry or stress, cheeks somewhat sucked in, black hair that ran down his neck that had a strand dangling over his left, dark gray eye. I'm Mui, the person in charge here. The fact that you were sent here means that you have lost the faith of your village. Mui shifted his head to eye the prisoners before speaking once again. Henceforth, I'd like you to keep in mind that you are all worthless. Naruto could not take it anymore and he erupted inthe middle of Mui's speech. I was set up. I didn't do anything. The prisoners around him gaped silently at the blonde's proclamation from inside the box. However, the rotund man did not stay silent. Don't speak unless spoken to. Mui silenced him with a wave of his gloved hand and turned his full attention to the blonde. You're saying that someone conspired to send you here? Mui asked. My village is in trouble, and if I don't find out who did it, then they will hurt the people in my village. Muse slowly walked forward towards the caged blonde. The villages of the world have tasked us with the mission of never allowing anyone they send here to escape. The black-haired man stood in front of the cage and tore off the paper that was holding the wooden crate in place, making it disappear in a puff of smoke. We couldn't care less about your circumstances. Nato gleefully jumped up with a devious smile on his face that he would be able to escape, yet the dream shattered when Mew formed one-hand seal and shouted, Kaden! Tenro, fire release! heavenly imprisonment. He brought his right fist back that filled with red fire and slammed it forward onto the blonde's sternum. With a burst of fire chakra, he was blasted back into the gate where he fell in a crumpled heap onto the cold, hard ground. The prisoners all gasped and stared in shock at how easily the blonde had been dispatched. This is a confinement technique that has been passed down in my clan. It is the sole reason why Kusagakure has been entrusted with managing Hazukijo. As long as that seal is on your body, you will not be able to mold chakra, be it from an internal source or not. During his speech, Naruto struggled into a sitting position, barely managing it while pulling up his jacket to view the flaring red seal that stretched from his stomach to his back. Mui raised up his hand to better demonstrate his point, and lifted 2 fingers. There are only 2 ways to leave this place. The first is for your village to officially request for your release. The second is death. Even though Mui had explained what the seal did, Naruto still had to attempt to break free, and this was a golden chance that might not appear again. Hey, now that I can move around, you're done for. He called inwards towards Kurama and was engulfed in a yellow chakra coating that flickered as though flames were licking the air around him, with black bars where the spirals were on his shoulders, on the black portion of his orange and black jacket, and a black bar traveling down towards his sandals. An oppressive feeling filled the air around him, making it hard to breathe for everyone around. I may not have any control, but it's my only hope. Naruto thought to himself as he took a step forwards to flash towards Mui, but fell down onto the ground with the cloak receding, the seal reacting with the Kyuubi's chakra and burning Naruto in response to using the internal chakra source. He gasped in agony as the seal pulsed, sending violent, burning responses throughout his body. What is this? He mentally struggled to gain his bearings while Mui continued on, unperturbed that Naruto's Biju cloak was a result of him having control over the Kyuubi's power. Impressive. I did not expect you to have control over your inner chakra source so early in age, but I wouldn't attempt to escape even with that chakra cloak. He conversationally added in a neutral voice, if you get a certain distance away from me, Tenro, heavenly imprisonment, will activate and burn you into a crisp. The blonde Jinchuriki struggled to stay conscious and looked up towards the towering figure of Mui with the darkened clouds in the background that seemed to be a constant of the scenery. Along the way towards Mui's face, he caught the chuckling face of the rotund man along with the guards, the shocked and thoroughly scared prisoners with the exception of one, a feminine-looking one that shot him minimally worrying and pitying glance before it vanished in an indifferent expression. While we're at it, know this as well, Kaden. Tenro cannot activate underwater as it is a fire-based technique. However, the ocean is both deep as the currents are vicious around Hazukijo. If you jump in, you will drown before you have any time to mold any chakra. The seal violently pulsated once again to further his point, bringing the blonde further into agony with his screams piercing the air. Escape was, and always will be, futile from Hazukijo. The group of prisoners walked in a straight, single file line through the small archway, the extremely large courtyard being on either side of the archway that led into the inner halls of Hazukijo. When they walked into the inner halls of the prison, the first room was the cell room where the majority of the prisoners were held. They slowly walked, ignoring the catcalls and the taunts coming from the prisoners held in by the strong, wooden bars of their prison. All of the prisoners, including Naruto, studied the area with either an impassive face or a saddened, fearful look. Along the way, the rotund man decided to talk. Once you have Mui-sama's Tenro placed on you, escape becomes impossible from here. Well, regardless, this place is rather nice once you get used to it, he said as they crossed under into the darkened, elongated room where the prisoners' cells were kept. These are your fellow inmates during your long stay here. But before you can become acquainted with them, he stopped and jabbed Naruto in the chest, the line still slowly moving. You will be checked to ensure that you do not have any weapons hidden on your person. Naruto grunted in response and followed the line, eventually reaching a lighter hallway with a few wooden benches chained to the wall and metal bars on the opposite side of the room. From there, the rotund man along with 2 of the guards began picking the prisoners one by one through the metal gate that had 2 of the guards were stationed next to. The blonde Jinchuriki sat down onto one of the benches that were chained to the wall, the bench being the closest to the metal gate. When he did sit down, the bench nearly vacated entirely except for a scant few that were either nervous or afraid of being near to the genin. The rest had fallen asleep while waiting for the physical examination. Which they did have a good reason for, the reason being the oppressive aura from the Biju cloak, which in all actuality was just condensed chakra from Kyuubi that was spread around Naruto's body. So what are you in here for? A man looking no older than his mid-thirties, wearing a vest with no undershirt that showed his muscled abs and arms and dark blue pants with medical tape wrapped around the bottom of the pant leg. His hair was a gray color and several of his teeth were knocked out. Personally, I'm in here for killing a village that had slighted my own from an order from my leader during the war since they wouldn't have had any help. But for some stupid damn reason, I was thrown into here when I didn't kill one innocent child. He grumbled out. Sounds like your village is pretty strict. Naruto commented, comparing the man's village to Konoha. He assumed the war he was talking about was just an exaggeration. Anything that big that would affect all of the elemental nations, and he would have known or at least figured it out given time. The man scoffed, hardly. Any shinobi order or mission is to be followed to the T. What village were you from? Konoha. Naruto muttered under his breath. Ah ha ha. The man laughing aloud at the confused blonde. That village is so damn laid back that it's surprising that they even have any strong shinobi or kunoichi there. Even though Naruto felt like he was betrayed, which he was, by Konoha, he still felt a pang of anger at the man's words, Konoha. Konoha is a strong village. But it's still the strongest. The words he said felt like ash in his mouth, yet for some reason, he could not figure out why they did. The man did have to grudgingly agree with Naruto's words before the prisoner who shot Naruto a pitying look earlier spoke up from not even a few feet away. That's enough of that. The man himself looked to be a woman from both his voice that sounded gruff like a man's but was off in a way that pointed towards a woman's voice and his body. It did send a shiver down Naruto's spine when he did a glance over on him and he found his body to be effeminate. He reminds me of Haku-san. Naruto almost drly thought to himself as he continued to study the man. The prisoner though stood around 5 feet 7 inches. Maybe 5 feet 8 inches and wore a green undershirt that had one long sleeve torn off at the shoulder. A pale green vest over the green undershirt that covered his neck. The pants he wore were the typical black shinobi pants with several pockets along with several holes in it with medical tape tapering off at the hem of them, also having the tape wrapped around both of his hands up to his forearms. His hair cut over the right side of his face, covering it entirely and hiding his right eye, but the rest of it was covered by his pale green bandana. The eyes though, seemed to be the oddest part of his girlish face. They were like the Rinnegan themselves, but only held 2 of the 4 rings and were a few shades lighter, being a gray color. This guy is right though, even if he didn't directly say it. Hazukijo is a wretched hive of villainy for those who have lost the support of their village. Like how a thief is just another thief and a murderer is just another murderer. They no longer require an excuse for their actions. He stated as he strolled towards Naruto. I don't need any excuse. I was framed. Naruto proclaimed once again. It seemed that no one believed him in the prison. However, at that moment the effeminate prisoner was called in by one of the 2 guards that had walked in with the large, rotund man. Oi, you with the bandana, come here. The prisoner began walking forward, leaving several words behind. If you understand what kind of place you are in, try not to dig too deeply into it from now on. He crossed the gate, leaving Naruto confused. What's that supposed to mean? Naruto muttered to himself, yet the fellow prisoner heard it as the metal gate closed. He stopped along with the guard that was walking with him and turned his head slightly towards Naruto. Think about it, he said before leaving the blonde alone to ponder his words that made no sense. Take off your clothes. Naruto's eyes widened as he heard the rotund man's words, ehhh. The man clapped a baton in his hands and the guards on either side of Naruto began slowly approaching the freaked-out blonde. Okay, I'm taking my clothes off. Naruto hurried to follow his command and was soon standing in only his white with black boxers. The man proceeded with checking every inch of his body other than his crotch, wrapping the baton against his semi-muscled frame to check for any concealed weapons that had been hidden either inside or outside the skin. Then proceeding to have Naruto jump on either leg as long as he kept wrapping the baton onto his hand. You're clear. Naruto could not be any happier as he reached for his clothes that the 2 guards had just went through and not so thoroughly checked for any weapons. However, Kami was not with Naruto at that moment as the man rapped his baton against Naruto's outstretched hand. He quickly brought it back while leveling a glare at the man. "What's the deal, Osan, old man?" Rotund man just chuckled in response before replying to Naruto, "Now take off your boxers." Naruto's eyes widened once again. "Why, you're kidding, right? Right?" The guards lunged out towards Naruto and yanked his boxers off. EHHHHHHHH. Naruto's scream echoed throughout the whole of the prison. How bad can this day get? Naruto thought to himself as a guard showed him to his wooden cell. If one looked at his experiences that day, one would say that it could not get worse. Such as, getting sealed with Kaden, Tenro and dealing with the subsequent pain from it, being physically checked for any weapons. Including a rectum check. That man must like checking up there for guys. Naruto shivered as he remembered the creepy chuckles the man gave out while checking Naruto. Shrugging, the blonde sat down onto his makeshift bed that consisted of a bed and a blanket and fell asleep. Only for a robed assailant appeared in a puff of smoke and knocked the shocked Naruto out with a simple karate chop. Either this kid is a hotshot or just plain stupid for falling asleep in an area he doesn't know. The assailant muttered under his breath while covering his head with a piece of cloth and vanishing in another puff of smoke. However, Naruto was not just plain stupid for falling asleep in an area he did not know. He had felt someone's stare leveled onto him as a sort of sixth sense that all shinobi and kunoichi obtain and as such, discreetly made a plan. So when the assailant appeared in the room, Naruto switched with a Kage Bunshin, shadow clone, that he had hidden in the top corner of the room, hidden by using the shadows as a guise to hide himself from a trick that Jiraiya had taught him. He jumped off of his position once the puff of smoke dissipated from the air and took a glance around the outside of the room to check for any patrolling guards. He found none. Quickly hurrying for his plan, he took out the keyring he had filched from the guard just before as he turned away from the cell and unlocked the wooden cell. He took an appraising glance towards the entrance he and the other prisoners entered from, and towards the other direction where he saw a circular opening in the middle of the dome-shaped room on the roof. Naruto dashed in that direction, missing the analytical glance from the effeminate prisoner from earlier. It seems that I was not wrong in my earlier assumption of you. Naruto stared blankly at the guard asleep at his desk. All the better for me. Naruto took one more glance at the guard before locking onto the circular hole in the roof and prayed that the Tenro would not activate too quickly. He stepped towards the wall in the back of him, thankful that he was already halfway towards the target with his current perch from climbing the cells upwards, and ran up the wall before flexing his leg muscles as hard as he could and rocketed forward with amazing force. The hole was far away 1 second then close up in another second, having barely enough time to latch both hands onto the underside of the rim of the circular hole. He quickly flipped and jumped through the hole, now beginning to feel the effects of the Tenro before loud, shrill alarms rang out in the prison. Naruto swore loudly, "Damn it," and continued his hell-bent pace, barreling forward across the roof while weaving, dodging and doing acrobatic feats to avoid the pikes shooting outwards from the roof. Then the Tenro hit in full force. With a shuddering gasp and narrowing eyesight that kept becoming narrower and narrower, he tottered like a drunk before falling off on his side in a bout of burning agony, down the side of the tiled roof, onto another and rolling off the side of it to the ground where guards and their watchdogs were patrolling. With loud and vicious snarls, the dogs leapt forward and began tearing and biting at the blacked-out blonde before the guards tore them away from the blonde. When the prisoners found out about the failed escape, it furthered their misery about the place, leading towards one collective thought. Escape would not come without terrible risks. After the Kage Bunshin was knocked out, the cloaked assailant vanished in a puff of smoke along with the clone into Mui's private office. The office itself was nice enough, with a few chairs, a fireplace, large wooden bookshelf, an old wooden desk with various writing utensils and paperwork on it, even including a lamp on the desk. A balcony overlooking the ocean and a portion of the courtyard along with stairs leading down to the lower levels of Hozukijo, as the office was one of the highest altitude rooms in the prison itself. The assailant left no time in studying the room he had seen so much of from helping Mui and getting into his good graces. Instead, he went to the bookshelf and pushed a blue-covered book that was on the third shelf out of the 5 there. With a loud creaking noise, a secret passage door opened up not a few feet away from the blue-covered book. Inside the opening revealed a darkened, stone staircase that followed the wall going far underground, with the occasional torch being lit due to several seals meant to detect chakra and lit when detected. Once again, the clacked assailant had no time to be wasted on mindless studying of the scenery, only on the job at hand. He rushed down the numerous stone stairs, using chakra to stick to the walls and wall jump downwards. Using this method allowed him to traverse the length of the stairs in under 4 minutes flat, whereas if he were just walking down, it would easily take 20 or more minutes to travel the length of the staircase. When the stone stairway was cleared, a wooden door with metal reinforcements appeared at the end of them that the assailant went through. From that point on, it was a narrow underground cavern with stalagmites, stalactites, even a small pool of water off to the side of the rock formations. Yet again, the cloaked assailant rushed ahead and ignored the scenery. After a short time, the stone steps began to curve to the right and the rock wall to the left expanded greatly to show a cavernous room with various scientific devices, including test tubes, vials, several containers with an oval-shaped top to them with lightning crackling in them, and a metal table with straps on it. Yet the most disturbing sight of them all was how the cavernous room narrowed and ended not 40 yards away from the metal table, showing part of a large stone block. Now, there wouldn't be anything disturbing at the sight of the block, but it was what was on the box that would disturb people. There was a mask depicted on it with a terrifying, full-toothed grin upon its visage. Its eyes were but horizontal slits between two slabs of the stone mask. Its chin was almost like a ball in a way, and in the center of its forehead was a large, crystalline-like orb that was set directly into the stone and protruded outwards from the stone and mask. There were various carvings all around the mask, yet it was from a different language, or a very much so older dialect from their own language as parts of it could be translated since it was similar to their kanji. Standing next to the metal table was Mui, calmly awaiting the assailant and Naruto's arrival. Within a matter of seconds, Naruto was strapped onto the table and just awakening when he heard the assailant and Mui's voices. "You took longer than expected." Mui's voice called out to the assailant. Naruto could almost hear the sheepish head rub coming from the assailant's deep and scratchy voice from being muffled from the cloth he were wearing overhead. Hey. It would have been faster had I been able to shunshin, body flicker, into here. Clone Naruto felt hit jumpsuit jacket being lifted up in a short intake of breath from Mui, the most emotion he had shown in a long time. He heard the clinking of a kunai being picked up, then was stabbed in the chest and was dispelled. "You messed up, Moroi." Mui's voice came close to an accusing tone towards the cloaked assailant. The reason Mui knew the Kage Bunshin Naruto was a clone was the fact that it did not have the Kaden Tenro, Heavenly Imprisonment, on it when Mui was about to take it off. Naruto had pulled a fast one on both the cloaked assailant and Mui. Who could that person have been though? Naruto thought to himself for near the 100th time. And the same result occurred each time. He had no clue as to who he could be. Fortunately, or unfortunately on how one could think about it, he was brought out of his thinking process when a voice called out from the other side of the metal door. "I had honestly expected you to go farther than that." Yet before Naruto could send back a retort, the same gruff yet oddly feminine voice appeased him in a way. "Yet with how much chakra you used, I'm surprised you had even gotten that far. It's amazing you didn't burst into flames after you jumped out of the circular hole in the ceiling with the amount of chakra you were using." "Who are you?" Naruto hurried to ask, putting his ear next to the metal door. The silence pounded into Naruto's ears before the person finally responded. "I will tell you later, as the very walls have ears here." He heard clothing rustling on the ground before the voice became hushed and low. "As for right now, I have important news that would benefit both you and I in regards to escaping Hazukijo and taking the Tenro off. But for now, another brief silence. Do not let your resolve falter, do not allow your will to be broken down, and you will live through to see your freedom returned back to you." He heard sounds of the person's quick steps. Naruto was once again accosted by silence, but as he peered down to the stone floor, he saw a green piece of cloth half underneath his side of the metal gate. The blonde then realized that the person was the effeminate inmate from not 2 days ago. For the first time in several days, Naruto let out a large grin at the thought of being able to escape with the Tenro off. 2 days later, last day of solitary. Over the past 2 days, Naruto had been replaying and thinking over the brief conversation with the prisoner. Yet that was blown to the side when another voice called out to him, this time from the small rectangular window when he was just awakening from sleeping. "Anyone in there?" A quiet, old-sounding voice called out, rousing Naruto from his sleep. Naruto immediately jumped up. "Who's there?" he asked. "No one special." The voice replied in return, "More importantly, do you want to get out?" Almost entirely forgetting his previous conversation with the green-clad prisoner from earlier, Naruto responded with vigor, "Can you get me out?" "What should I do?" The voice then sounded somewhat amused by his questions, and it showed in his voice, "If you defeat Mui, the Tenro will disappear from your body completely." At first Naruto seemed wary of the advice, but as a few moments passed it made sense. Beat the person holding the control, and it slips. Regardless, Naruto still had to ask in a vain attempt to get the man's motives, "Why are you telling me this?" Silence met his question, only the waves responding by lapping onto the rocks of the cliff that Hazukijo could be heard from solitary at that point. In the courtyard later that day when Naruto was released, Mui strolled through the area only to stop and turn around when Naruto's voice yelled out, "Oi!" The caped man gave his attention to the blonde. "I heard that if you're defeated then the seal will disappear." An excited murmur rose through the crowd of inmates that loosely surrounded the duo. "As you are right now, you will not defeat me," Mui stated towards Naruto, who narrowed his eyes in response. Naruto charged Mui, cocking his fist back and swinging when Mui was in range only for the caped man to turn out of the way and brought his leg up to kick the blonde's stomach. He flew towards the ground several yards away from Mui's leg, guiding the direction and onto the stone ground. "Why do you continue to fight?" Mui asked. He received a growl in response as Naruto picked himself up from the ground and charged in once again, only for the seal to begin pulsating halfway to the head of Hazukijo from unconsciously using chakra to dull the damage from Mui's kick. He fell into a bowed position of sorts in front of the head of Hazukijo. "Is it for your village? Or something more?" Naruto felt a pang go through his heart when Mui mentioned his village. The place that had betrayed him for no reason. In response, Naruto's anger rose. The guards who had been watching picked up the angry blonde who yelled out, "Oi! Let me go so I can beat the shit out of Mui Teme." The rotund man with the glasses who had innately greeted the prisoners gleefully stated, "Oh ho ho. You must have liked solitary confinement a lot to want to go back after just being released." For prisoners, the second offense is a 5-day stint in confinement. They carted the blonde off, leaving Mui and the crowd staring at the retreating form of the guards and Naruto leaving two of the prisoners with differing emotions in their wake. One having a self-satisfied air around him with the other shaking their head at Naruto's actions. 5th day of solitary confinement, morning. Over the previous 5 days Naruto was immersed deep thought, only rousing himself out of it to eat the food he was given and to go to the bathroom in a pot that was brought in 3 times a day. During those days of thought, he found he couldn't ignore his thoughts about Konoha, or more specifically, Tsunade sending him to Hazukijo without hearing his side of the story. He grew angered, saddened, depressed at the thoughts until eventually settling for anger at Tsunade and the ninja of Konoha that hadn't at least fought for his freedom. He had helped them so much and asked so little in return. Why couldn't they return some of that favor they owed him? He also figured out his limits with the Tenro, being only 1 cage bunshin per day before he lost control and the seal activated. "Naruto Uzumaki, you're free to come out." A guard opened the metal door, allowing Naruto to crawl out and breaking him out of his thoughts. He stretched and nodded to the guards before walking out to find the smell of food, thinking of his meeting with the Kyuubi along the way. Flashback. 2 days ago, Naruto's mindscape. The mindscape of Naruto was the same as it had even been. Virtually a large, narrow sewer that was somewhat cleaner than an actual one, yet that didn't matter as Naruto couldn't become dirty in there. He approached the large, intricate metal gate that held back the Kyuubi and called out for the fox. "Furball, you there?" A loud growling noise came from inside the gate before a large claw crashed down onto the gate. "What the hell do you want, ninja, human?" "I came here to talk furball," Naruto retorted. "I'm already in a shitty mood, ninja, from that goddamn Kaden. Tenro, fire release, heavenly imprisonment, and I don't need your damn insolence on top of that." Kyuubi roared at Naruto and slammed against the gate once again, this time with his whole body. Naruto blinked like an owl. What did the Tenro do to him? Naruto voiced his question and the Kyuubi irritably replied, BQs when you used the damned Biju cloak, the Kaden. Tenro reacted on me as well, Ninjin, and it burned me all to hell. If it wasn't for me taking most of the internal damage, you'd have been a crisp in mere milliseconds. Kyuubi shifted a bit so that his stomach was not in view, but Naruto caught the view of the same seal on Kyuubi that Naruto had on himself, and a good majority of his underside badly burned. The container stared Kyuubi into his red-rimmed, slitted eyes. "I'm sorry, Furball. It wasn't my intention to harm you when I used the Biju cloak, so thank you." Kyuubi stared long and hard into his container's blue eyes. "What brought this on, Ninjin?" Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. "Well, if it wasn't for you taking the hit, then I'd have died along with you. I just wanted to escape this prison." "Ah ha ha ha, you think I did that just for your sake?" Kyuubi roared in laughter. "Then how about this, my container? I will help contain the damage from the seal and even give you some insight and advice. Provided that you allow me certain privileges." "What privileges? And it better not be letting you free," Naruto yelled in response. "You allow me to see, hear, feel, smell and taste through your own feelings. Since this is your mind and you have defeated me, you have absolute power in here. All you have to do is state it as a mental command as it will happen." The Kyuubi spoke with a silver tongue except for spitting out the word, defeated, as if it were a disgusting thing. It was easy to see how he managed to live for so long. Naruto stared at the Kyuubi, pondering his words and wondering if it was a wise move to accept until a thought hit him. "Kyuubi, how would you give me advice if I was in a fight? If you sent me here in the middle of a fight, I'd get myself killed." Naruto narrowed his eyes at the large fox who snarled in response to his container's question. "God damn it, Ninjin, why are you looking a gift in the mouth? For fuck's sake, with mental consent from you I can assist you in setting up a mental link that would allow me to talk to you provided that you keep the link open. You'd be able to close it at will." Kyuubi growled at Naruto, angered at having to consent to a mortal's will if he wanted it. "Alright, that's fine by me. So long as you don't overstep your bounds, I'm fine with that," Naruto jovially replied, making Kyuubi wonder in the back of his mind as to whether his container was bipolar. "But if you do overstep and try to take control of my body, I will muzzle you and cut off any access to the outside world for you." Kyuubi growled once again, angered at the insolence that a mortal showed him, but forcibly bowed his furry head. This was the only way he'd be able to get some sort of entertainment other than the memories of his container, which were fun to watch, but he wanted to feel, to smell, to hear, to taste things once again rather than live in a dank sewer. "Very well, Naruto," Kyuubi growled out. It was a start, a rocky start at best, but it was a point nonetheless for Naruto and Kyuubi. The mess hall of the prison was nice enough, has multiple long tables, a few wooden pillars to support the roof on the side of the hall, and on the other side of the room directly opposite of the door was the window where food was put through for the prisoners. This was the scene that Naruto walked into from solitary, only the room was filled with numerous of the inmates that leveled hard gazes at him. He nervously strode forward, smiling widely when he saw the ramen that one person was eating. "Ah. Kusagakure has ramen too. It's probably not better than." Naruto broke off mid-sentence and shook his head. Not that he was afraid of the glares, but because of the raw emotions just behind the word, Konoha. He walked ahead to the window and was about to get some food when a man with broad shoulders, a fairly muscled body and was fairly tall overall got up. He had black hair, a darker complexion, gray eyes, a long face with various age wrinkles on it. He wore a brown and yellow coat that was frayed when it reached his waist with green pants with a knee guard. The man strode over to Naruto, who assumed he was going to need to fight, but only started slowly clapping with a smile on his face. Soon after the man began clapping, the rest of the prisoners joined in. After a few moments the whole room was filled with clapping and cheering that confused Naruto to no end. The man pushed the confused Naruto forward onto the table where he soaked up the attention like a sponge. Several minutes later, the clapping died down and everyone calmed down. Naruto jumped off of the table, got his ramen and sat down at a table where several of the inmates acknowledged him by nodding their heads or smiling at him. The man then sat down opposite of Naruto, who then asked, "Why is everyone so happy?" "Because you're like a star here, albeit a scary star, but a star nonetheless. You nearly escaped your first day here, faced Mui himself right after getting out of solitary, and let's not mention your initial power display when you first got here. The man grinned at Naruto. "The name's Moroi." "Naruto Uzumaki slurp," Naruto said as he swallowed another chunk of noodles and smiled at Moroi. Hazukijo didn't seem to be such a bad place at all from how Naruto viewed it. Courtyard, dusk. "All prisoners, your physical exercise is over. Return to your cells," came the scratchy voice from an intercom, informing all the prisoners to go in. During such time, all guards report into the rotund man before patrolling over having a night off depending on their hours. One such guard was not there, and currently rushing to make it as he was still in the courtyard. "Crap, I'm going to be late." The guard was scared, obviously. But being late became the worst of his worries when he was running through the archway to the inner walls of the prison and a blonde streak knocked him out via kick to the top of the spine. He fell in a crumpled heap and Naruto did feel guilty, but what he was doing was being practical. By taking the guard's uniform and putting it on, he had free access to walk out. And did he take that opportunity? Naruto strolled outside until he was out of sight from prying eyes and onto the steps leading up to Hazukijo. After he reached that point, he ran with a giddy cheer. "I'm glad I checked my limits with the cage bunchin'," Naruto cheerfully thought as he cleared the last few steps with a leap and onto the small bridge. Thinking about how he was going to go from here, Naruto stopped. "Wait, if I go overland then I'll be burnt to a crisp if I get too far away from Muiteme. I guess it's time to go by water," he decided while the Kyuubi actively thought in the background. "This is going to end badly. But at least if he doesn't use the Biju cloak I'll be fine for the most part." The fox ferally grinned as he caught the scent of another human. "Who is this?" "A male inmate chasing after the ninja. But what is that scent?" "Ah ha 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 ha." Kyuubi snorted in his cage, "So he isn't a Hebit in all actuality, eh she? This deal was actually worth it." Kyuubi grinned once again before letting the fireworks roll out. He sure as hell wasn't going to tip off his container unless it was life-threatening, as the fox didn't want to die, but the deal he made was already bearing interesting fruits. Odd fruit grew just outside of Hazukijo, almost like a tomato and berry mix that Naruto noted as he ran towards the cliffs. He soon reached the cliffside and ignored the tall rock formations on the cliffs, only focusing on the roiling waters and the tall pillars of stone in the water. "This might be harder than I thought." Naruto's sweat dropped as he stared at the whirling waters. Just as he was about to jump though, he heard a familiar voice call out to him. "Are you running away from Hazukijo after you gave your word to stay?" Besides, Naruto turned around to see the effeminate prisoner not a few yards away from him with a disappointed look on his face. "The seal will stay on your body, and the moment you get out of the water and dry off, you will ignite into flame." Naruto had never thought of it in those terms. Maybe if you actually think out your plans, you would not have been in this situation. Kyuubi snidely whispered in Naruto's ear. Naruto growled inwardly at the fox, who merely smirked before quietening. However, just as he was about to walk back to him, the rocks collapsed with Naruto following. The prisoner swore violently as he rushed towards the shell-shocked blonde. Shock filled Naruto's system as he attempted to cling to the rock, only for them to crumble beneath his feet and hands as he attempted to stick to them using chakra. He plummeted down the tall, jagged cliffside into the water that engulfed him. Even though he was able to mold chakra in the water, it was almost impossible for Naruto. The currents were strong and required nearly all of his concentration to stay above water, but when he was able to mold even the small amount, he would get sucked under the water from losing concentration. The prisoner quickly jumped in after the blonde, who had just smacked against the water, not bothering to mess with his clothes. Being a native to the land helped as he impacted against the water. He swam like a fish in the water against the currents and kept a firm eye on the bobbing blonde before he went underwater and slammed against the rock pillar. The breath knocked out from his system and was about to become sucked into another current before the prisoner caught him as he firmly planted his feet onto the rocks while using the currents to keep himself in place. Before another current could take hold of the duo, the prisoner quickly swam to the surface with a half-conscious Naruto in tow while using chakra to help propel him forward to the surface and to dry land. Sniffled thank you. Naruto shivered as he inched closer to the small fire that the prisoner had built. After hearing no response, Naruto turned to find the cliff and his eyes widened. The prisoner he had assumed was a man was in all actuality a female. Or was she in it? Are you a transvestite? She turned, closed the distance between her and Naruto, and a resounding smack resonated throughout the small outcropping they were under. Wisely, Naruto took the harsh slap as a loud no, and did not push the subject. Sometimes, like right now, Naruto really hated the fact he was so outspoken and couldn't hold his tongue at times. "No, I am not a transvestite. I am a woman, in case you didn't notice," she said in a slightly more feminine voice, losing the gruffness that she faked in it. She glared at him and pointed to her breasts that were wrapped tightly with medical tape. The glare lessened as she noticed it was an honest mistake, but it still remained. Sorry. Naruto inched closer to the fire. The woman sighed and pulled on her green shirt, pale green vest, and sat next to Naruto on the other side of the fire. At least she kept her pants on. "It's fine. Don't say that again though," she warned him before continuing. "Now that we're at least away from prying eyes and ears, I can tell you about my mission." Naruto stared inquisitively at her as she continued. "My name is Ryuzetsu, a member of the Kusagakure Anbu. My purpose for being here is to ensure that the box of paradise does not awaken and to kill Mui." He absorbed her words like a sponge, but a question escaped his lips as she took a breath. "What is the box of paradise? And why does it involve they?" "Sorry." A silent stare quieted Naruto and allowed Ryuzetsu to speak again. "If you would allow me to reach that point, I will be able to explain it to you." The blonde sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. The box of paradise is an old object dating back to the time of the Rikudo Sennin, sage of the Six Paths. It is said that the box can grant any wish to the person that uses it, and Kusagakure did use it a long time ago. However, just as Kusa was about to finish conquering the world, it was destroyed the next day. No one knows what happened, only that the box was involved with the destruction of Kusa. She took a steadying sigh and stared at Naruto intently. From that point on, Kusagakure became split into two separate factions: the Truth and the Flower. The Truth are those who wish to use the box to restore the former glory of Kusa and continue what was nearly done all those years ago. We, the Flower, Ryuzetsu pointed to herself, are those who wish that the box should remain dormant, as it will bring about another great destruction upon Kusagakure. The head of Hazukijo, Mui, she inwardly snarled at his name, outwardly sharing her obvious displeasure of the man, is one of the Truth. They would do anything to awaken the dormant box, and as far as we know, the box requires a great chakra intake to actually awaken it. That would be where you come into the fold because of your Jinchuriki status. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he slowly connected the dots. They wanted the Kyuubi's chakra to meet their own ends for their country. From what our spies have managed to gather, the Truth were already planning to drag you here within the next couple of years, but when news got out that you were to be sent here, it was as if it were an early Christmas for them. That is the only reason they have been so slow to act in awakening the box, along with the fact that it would be suspicious for an inmate to go missing in the first few days. After he connected the remaining dots, he had to ask, "So you want my help in destroying the box and killing Mui Teme?" "It would be beneficial for both of us to do so, yes." But Ryuzetsu narrowed her eyes, but not at Naruto, but in memory of the man who killed his own son. "When the time comes to kill Mui, the final blow will be mine," she declared with such dedication and determination that Naruto couldn't help but nod and agree to. "If you want to take the kill, go ahead." Naruto amiably agreed before a thought had stuck Naruto about the use of chakra. Kyuubi shook his head and snorted to himself. Finally the ninja realizes it. "Ryuzetsu, when will we need to get back before the guards catch us?" Naruto quickly asked as he leaned forward towards Ryuzetsu. "Around 2 hours before the patrol shifts and the flower spies are on break," she confusedly replied. "Why?" Naruto shifted into a meditative form with his hands on his knees after making sure he was as dry as possible and hoped that the seal wouldn't begin pulsating because of the distance between him and Mui. He felt the natural chakra saturated in the air and began absorbing it, slowly going into sage mode with the natural chakra fueling it. 30 seconds passed before a dark orange pigmentation appeared around his eyes. Ryuzetsu stared at him in confusion at what he was doing before his eyes opened. The pupils were a rectangular bar and around the outer edge of his eyes turned orange. Before Ryuzetsu could ask though, he vanished in the wind as one of the large stone outcrops shattered into hundreds of shards and slivers, with Naruto standing right next to it wearing a red coat with black flames outlining the hems of it. His fist was outstretched and the chakra that was a part of the punch dissipated from the air. He vanished in the air once again, this time leaving a noticeable wave of air in his path with rocks blowing backwards. She stared in amazement at the blonde who appeared in front of her again with several questions rolling around in her mind like a maelstrom. How did he manage to use chakra to that extent? What was up with the eye change? Was it involved with the meditation? Where did the good-looking coat come from? Naruto-san, how did you manage to do that feat? The Tenro should have activated or at the least began pulsating. Ryuzetsu exclaimed, showing more positive emotion that he had ever seen her with. Not that he had seen her for that long anyways. Naruto grinned widely, stretching his birthmarks as he responded, it's called Sage Mode. I use the natural chakra from nature itself to give myself a huge power-up. As of right now, I could do that hundreds and hundreds of times before the absorbed chakra goes away without using any jutsu. He explained to her. Slowly the dots began connecting for her. Using meditation as a medium for gathering natural chakra, he could absorb it. When he absorbed enough, he goes into Sage Mode, which augmented his current skill set. Still, Ryuzetsu had some questions about it. Does the natural chakra increase the power of jutsu to be stronger than jutsu being powered by regular chakra, and how do you get the code? Yeah, it does. Naruto then scratched his head as he wondered about the second part of the question. I got the code when I finished my Sage Mode training with my summons, the toads. Every time I do go into Sage Mode, the code puffs into smoke and onto me. Either that or Ma and Pa put a seal on me to do that when I wasn't looking. Naruto began checking himself for any hidden seals. Ryuzetsu almost chuckled at the blonde, they probably put a seal on you. Her curiosity then caught the best of her and asked, this might be an invasion of privacy, but when you say, Ma, and Pa, do you mean your parents are some of the toads? Naruto cracked a sad smile as he remembered the only memories he had of his parents, Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze, the toads that taught me. I'm an orphan. Ryuzetsu felt a small pang of guilt for bringing that up, but she didn't know yet Naruto caught onto her guilt rather quickly through the slight chakra fluctuation and smiled at her. It's fine, Ryuzetsu. Oh, and I can sense chakra while I'm in Sage Mode. She blinked slowly as she realized the importance just being able to sense chakra would be in their mission. Naruto, she began with her lips twitching upwards. I think our mission just became a whole lot easier. Of course it did. I'm awesome like that, Datbeo. Naruto grinned widely once again with the same verbal tick he picked up when he was younger. Datbeo? Ryuzetsu raised an eyebrow at the grinning blonde before shrugging and becoming serious once more. We need to have a plan set up, and if all goes right with the spies gathering information without the truth making a move on you, we'll be ready in a month. They slowly passed the rest of the hour discussing the plan and the limit of Naruto's Sage Mode, as the plan would rely heavily on it as their main ace in the sleeve. As it was right now, Ryuzetsu and Naruto both became confident in their plan for their mission to end Mui and destroy the box. Now it was just a matter of time before the plan would be implemented and the hammer struck the anvil. The food really is good here, Naruto said to Ryuzetsu while slurping up a bowl of ramen that he had gotten for breakfast. Ryuzetsu shook her head at the blonde. How can you possibly even eat ramen for breakfast, Naruto-san? She herself was eating eggs and a rice ball. Because it's the food of the gods, Naruto exclaimed when he swallowed the last bit of his ramen. Ryuzetsu rolled her eyes, checking the room in the process for anyone listening in on their conversation from the corner of the room during the process. I have an idea about the seal and just how much chakra activates it. She discreetly checked the room again before continuing. I believe it's due to the amount of chakra the person has, and then a small percentage of that can be used before the seal does activate. So in your case, you can use around mid-Chunin chakra reserves before the seal activates, and I can use around low Genin chakra levels before the seal activates. She sighed at the low amounts of chakra she would be able to use. It was barely enough to wall walk for 7 minutes straight, so any assassination attempt against Mui would have to be quick and precise without dragging the fight on. Yet before she could continue any further, they both heard a voice lowly call out to them from behind the closest pillar. If you're planning to take on Mui, I want in. Moroi walked to the tensing duo, but before they could attempt something irrational, he quickly added in the same low voice as before, I'm here to uncover any information about the box from Kumo. I just recently got a message from B-san to help you out as best as I can, Naruto. At that, Naruto's resistance quickly waned as he remembered the man he nicknamed Octopops. But Ryuzetsu's resistance still stood strong. "How do we know you aren't a lackey of Mui?" she asked. Moroi noted the warning tone in her voice and moved to mollify her worry. "If I was, I couldn't give a very accurate description of Naruto's current skill set to Mui if I so wanted, but I haven't." Moroi smiled at Ryuzetsu's studying and wary gaze before adding, "Besides, I'll willingly give all of my information of the inner chambers of Hazukijo that no members of the flower can reach without being discovered, along with the patrol routes and various other goodies about them. It helps to have managed to worm my way up the totem pole here and get into Mui's good graces." Ryuzetsu was still somewhat hesitant at that point for someone to just walk up and offer their assistance, even if they were requested to help through a trusted third party. Naruto, on the other hand, was glad for the help and assistance, especially if B contacted him to help Naruto. "That's more than what we could get by ourselves, Ryuzetsu. Besides, if he's willing to help us, then it could make our job easier if he really was asked by B." He tried convincing Ryuzetsu, who nearly caved in with Naruto's suggestion. Besides, Moroi pulled out his Kumo Hite 8 with a cloud after checking to make sure no one was looking from the inside his jacket's inner lining to show Ryuzetsu and Naruto, as every prisoner's Hite 8 was confiscated when they arrived and replaced with one with no visible markings to show any affiliation to their village. "Does this prove my claim?" At that, Ryuzetsu finally agreed, yet still had some reservations about working with a person who had worked with Mui. "Fine. But if you cross us, I will personally show you why I was chosen for this mission." Moroi nodded in agreement but couldn't blame her in the least bit for some of her distrust. He did, after all, work for Mui in a sense of the word. For the next 40 minutes Moroi began reciting some of the information that he promised to give, but did not give them all, as it would take far too long in that case, and someone would get suspicious if they were talking for hours on end when they had never even talked with each other much beforehand. When he stated that he wasn't going to give all of the information in one setting because of two reasons. It wouldn't be wise to be seen talking for hours on end, secluded away from the rest of the prisoners, as it could be interpreted easily enough. And two, it was too much information to be passed on in one setting, as they would have to memorize it, and forgetting a vital piece of information could be deadly in their mission. So in response to that, they planned to space out their meetings in the courtyard to around half an hour maximum every day, with Moroi meeting them in their individual cells at night, alternating to each one every night to impart more of his knowledge for another hour. He never did expect their thirst for the knowledge to be so great, though. 1 week later. As the week progressed, both Naruto and Ryuzetsu memorized as much of Hazukijo as they possibly could, at a rate that Moroi was left nearly sleep-deprived and paranoid of guards approaching, as they literally had him running between both cells after 2 hours of teaching each of them separately. It was honestly a crack up to both Naruto and to Ryuzetsu in a way when he jumped the moment he heard someone walking by the cell or even talking near them. From what Moroi had told them, they knew about the guards' limitations, which were surprisingly low for what Hazukijo held within its claws. They were only around a Chunin's skill in taijutsu at the most, with absolutely no skill in nin or genjutsu, but had decent skill in using the weapons they were issued. They also learned about the various squads and individual guard routes, the secret passages that Moroi had uncovered or been told about, what he knew of the box from what Mui had told him, and of Mui's office and private chambers. Another important facet of the prison they had learned was that the guard towers and battlements were armed at all times with guard switches every 2 hours, being that the new guard relieves the old one with a spoken code replied to each other as a line of defense of sorts against intruders. As the week had progressed, when they weren't memorizing what they could of the prison, which was a good majority of the daytime, both Naruto and Ryuzetsu grew closer along with Moroi, when he wasn't in a paranoid mode, that is. They joked, laughed, and otherwise put on an amazing front that fooled the prisoners and guards alike that they became close friends, which in all actuality, they had. From all the information they had, they all felt extremely confident that they would be prepared should any unexpected wrenches to be thrown into their plans and have to improvise on the spot. After all, why wouldn't they understand every inch of Hazukijo, as it could very well be used as a weapon when they were handicapped as far as they were? Wait, so you mean that you literally painted the Hokage monument, the landmark in Konoha that everyone in the elemental continues knows, in broad daylight, and only your academy teacher caught you? Ryuzetsu asked in shock. How can one genin, No, Jen and Hopeful managed to paint a mountain without someone noticing in the first place. Naruto grinned at Ryuzetsu as they slowly walked around the prison courtyard. Naruto had eventually gotten to a comfortable level with Ryuzetsu to even talk to her about his exploits in Konoha, provided it was never about his incarceration, as the very thought of the topic sent him on an unwanted reminder of that night. Of the distrust that one of the closest people to him that he even considered a grandmother, an older sister, and even a mother at times. No, he did not want to remember that night, nor ever think or hear about it again. How did the Anbu never catch you? She incredulously asked. In Kusa, if any important landmark was defaced, the person who did it would be thrown into prison depending on the damage and forced to pay for the repairs. Naruto blinked his eyes like an owl as he imagined himself at Kusa. Yeah, like hell he'd be able live there. The talk between the two slowly subsided to an amiable silence as they slowly walked around the courtyard. During the silence, Naruto's thoughts began to wander and eventually wrap around the woman known as Ryuzetsu. He often wondered about her, what caused her to detest Mui so much, along with the mystery engulfed that event. But he never asked, as he thought it would be considered rude. Not that he wasn't rude himself, which he was at times, but due to the reason that he didn't want to offend the closest person he considers a good friend in the desolate prison that was known as Hazukijo. But occasionally one of his odd, and quite annoying, quirks that were associated with all shinobi and kunoichi would rear its head. Ryuzetsu, why do you hate that Teme, Mui, so much? Yeah, sometimes, he really hated that quirk. She turned and appraised him with emotionally detached violet eyes for several minutes. Naruto began fidgeting uncomfortably, internally panicking that he offended her greatly, but before he could move to fix his mistake she sighed and cut him off unintentionally. For reasons that involved Mui and the death of a very close friend. She curtly stated before striding ahead. Naruto cursed inwardly at the sound of her voice and hurried to catch up to her with the intent to fix his mistake. I'm sorry for asking, Ryuzetsu. It slipped when I was thinking about how you could hate Mui so much. Ryuzetsu turned and stared at him with the intensity of a hawk staring down its prey for several moments. As long as that was not intentional, I have no qualms about forgetting about the question. Her lips quirked ever so slightly when she saw Naruto's face light up with hope, but I do believe we have some company approaching us. The quickly changing facial expression on Naruto's face to a more neutral appearance told her he heard their loud footsteps approaching as well, and felt a warming pang of pride in her being with a lesson he learned from her over the time spent together. Weakness in any way, shape or form is not a liability that can be afforded to give to any future or current enemies in any hostile environment. They turned to see approximately 20 of the bulkier and muscular men of Hazukijo approaching them with ill intent, clear in their battle-ready postures. The Tenro, heavenly imprisonment, easily spotted on their chests. She shared a momentary glance with Naruto before focusing her full attention upon the men. One of them, the leader from what the duo could tell being the tallest at 6 feet 7 inches, muscles to rival that of the Raikage, and carried himself with an arrogant air, smirked at Ryuzetsu and Naruto. Looky there, buddies. We have 2 fresh meat bags that haven't been properly introduced to the intricacies of Hazukijo. A bloodthirsty chuckle arose from the group as bone-popping snaps resonated in the air from knuckles and necks. Let's introduce ourselves then. Several moments passed with little movement despite the open-ended invitation from their boss to attack before a mirthless chuckle came from Naruto before any movement could be made, infuriating several members of the group. I believe you haven't introduced yourselves yet anyways. Like they would introduce themselves anyway. Ryuzetsu sniffed at the group. Savages? Why you? Several of the members growled at their audacity before being cut off by the leader. Shut your lips, Yamato. He backhanded the smallest of the protesters before addressing Naruto with a snigger playing on his lips. The name's Yakum. Yakum thought for a moment before continuing. I rather like your spunk, kiddo. Let's see if you can fight as well as you can talk with your little buddy. With a snap of his fingers, the 18 other men standing waited for not a second before charging Ryuzetsu and Naruto. They split unevenly, with 10 going towards Naruto, the rest advancing towards Ryuzetsu. Despite the odds, Naruto grinned like an 8-year-old in a candy shop. Finally, a way to relieve stress in a way that didn't annoy anyone other than the men he was anxious to beat down. His eyes quickly analyzed their movements, quick, jerky and erratic movement from 7 of the 10 approximately 10 paces out from him. Slow, sluggish and heavy movements from the other 3 that were approximately 15 paces away. The ones moving the quickest were moving in no particular order or formation, making it easy for Naruto to discern where to attack first. There. Naruto shot off, careful not to draw upon chakra to augment his movements, and aimed for a scraggly man with a distinctive jagged scar running across his neck that was at the far right of the loosely formed assault party, taking him down with little resistance put up from a wild right hook that was blocked with Naruto's own right forearm. Naruto's right leg shot out and connected with sickening force on the man's solar plexus, a bone or two cracking minimally from the force that would have been more with chakra behind it. The man fell back onto the stone-cobbled ground, rasping for air as Naruto used the momentum generated from the kick to spin towards the upcoming group, deflecting a haymaker with his left arm before following it up with a right uppercut to the taller man's jaw. He stumbled back and Naruto capitalized on it by spontaneously shooting forward, catching a grazing kick on his calf, making the blonde buckle for a brief moment before sinking to the ground. He watched an arm extend for a punch, an elbow thrust forward and several low, sweeping kicks that he saw flash forward past his eyes, the wind ruffling his hair. Kyuubi Jinchuriki kicked forward off of the ground and rammed his fist onto and off of the tall, gruff man's jaw, a crack resounding through the area. Naruto turned and grinned at the remaining 5 gang members that were able to fight along with their larger counterparts, reinforcements bringing the totally back up to 8. Come on, is that all you got? Ryuzetsu weaved in between the fists, elbows, knees and kicks with a grace like a dancer, unlike Naruto's rough, yet still effective, brawling style. She quickly ducked underneath a rather meaty fist, putting both hands on top of the fist and launching herself into the air towards the tall, extremely vast man. She landed on his right shoulder before back-flipping off, kicking the back of his head hard enough to send him forward onto a slow teammate that was crushed under the unconscious meat tank. Dashing forward, she threw a combination of 2 lightning-quick kicks by way of a spinning kick followed up by a back thrust kick at the diaphragm of the man closest to her, dropping him in a crumpled heap, gasping for air, barely conscious. Ryuzetsu mentally scoffed at how weak these men were. The only strength they had was in numbers, and even then, they couldn't even use that to their advantage. 3 down, 5 to go, and Naruto has taken down 2. I wonder how he'll deal with the rest of the men. Hearing the blonde's words not even 2 seconds later made her sigh, outwardly this time while she narrowed her eyes in irritation after barely sidestepping to avoid a rather nasty right hook towards her temple. Why did he have to make the job harder than was necessary? Crap, Naruto mentally cursed as he attempted to shift and dodge from the redoubled effort from the enraged men. Maybe saying that wasn't the smartest. The blonde thought as he rammed his knee into a reedy-looking man who coughed up spittle tinged with red while falling to the floor, narrowly sidestepping a roundhouse kick to his jaw. Only to move into the line of fire for another attack that came in the form of a fist pummeling itself onto Naruto's nose, breaking the cartilage. Warm blood trickled down his nose as he jumped back and away from the rest of the men, glaring balefully at the man who managed to sock him. Not so tough now, EH? The tan man scoffed at Naruto and proceeded to charge him along with the other 6 of his allies, 2 coming from the left and right, 1 circling around to Naruto's backside with the remaining 2 charging the Jinchuriki up front. Quickly taking in where all the attackers were at, Naruto took a chance with charging into the middle of the fray once again. A fist courtesy of Naruto found itself sidestepped by the tan man, who also gifted the same courtesy to Naruto. The blonde jumped over the fist and rolled over the man's arm, finally landing in back of the 3 men who found themselves to be only 1 once again, the tan man. Naruto spun, using the momentum from the spin to augment his elbow's force against the back of an extremely pale, thick yet muscular man, effectively knocking him out before throwing his leg around in a roundhouse kick to a semi-turned masked face that was soon kissing the ground not moments later in jet black darkness. 4 left, haha. The remaining 4, with the exception of the tanned man who was of a swimmer's build, were the frame and build that was hunted for in bodyguards, towering heights, black skin and corded muscles lining their arms and legs, with similarities going so similar that they could be mistaken as triplets. Their only discerning features was an arm simply missing, one that was bald and the last having a scar running from left eyebrow to jawbone. The three bulky men gave a moment's thought to their predicament as to how the blonde was systematically eliminating their comrades. They shared a thoughtful glance before attacking as a group head-on, the tanned man standing back to observe how Naruto dealt with a coordinated attack instead of a bar fight type brawl. I wonder how you'll handle Michiro, the strong arm, Gant, the scalper, and Ichiro, the one-eyed terror, the elite Junin trio of Kumo. Ryuzetsu swatted the fist barreling her way with ease and followed up on the slim man's shock by launching her leg to his ribs. Several loud bone-cracking sounds resounded in the air around the prone form of the man on the floor several feet away. This is pathetic, both my own precarious taijutsu style and the utterly weak opposition. Both are terrible. She lamented her poor taijutsu prowess without chakra as a twinge of pain hit her, originating from her foot, her weapon of choice to augment her fighting style not present. This petty squabble would have been put down already had I been able to bring my naginata. With a growl threatening to release itself from her throat, she quickly moved to discover where the remaining four men were at before moving to assault them and end the petty squabble. She charged the wary men, hiding a modicum of surprise at the fact that an older man in his 50s and gray-white shoulder-length hair with stubble passing for a beard, avoiding her sweeping kick along with the follow-up kick from the ground directed to his sternum. Ryuzetsu quickly ducked and weaved through the barrage of quick jabs, elbows and knees thrown in tandem with extreme difficulty, countering with a jab to the underside of his lean arm or with a leg to a knee to no avail as it did nothing to stop the freight train. Slowly, the other men began to circle in on the fight. Her surprise was evident to the older man as he chuckled in between putting his right arm up to block a kick from her left. "Didn't expect your opponent to have such skill, girlie?" He whispered the last part to Ryuzetsu, chuckling more when she froze and caught a heel drilled into her right shoulder from two of the three working in tandem. Ryuzetsu cried in pain before viciously thrusting her leg out to cave in the offending leg's kneecap, inwardly cursing the pain of a dislocated shoulder from her momentary lapse of concentration while weaving out of the throng of the fight. Can take a debilitating injury and still fight amidst the pain. She and her friend just might be my way out of this hell. The graying man mused to himself as he noted Naruto's brawl slowly turn into a one-sided beatdown with the use of a unique taijutsu style and Ryuzetsu's elegant yet brutal method of battle. He shrugged as he watched her efficiently take down the remaining two men with a combination of catching one's arm with her left, showing amazing flexibility with her leg snapping up and rendering the arm useless by fracturing the joint. That man cried in agony before being silenced by his throat catching a heel in it, neck snapping back with enough force to snap a spin, yet not kill him. That takes some skill to do in the heat of battle and fighting the haze of an injury to not kill. She's as smart at least to not risk going to the underground cells for life. With all the evidence he needed, the graying man strode with a purpose and eliminated the remaining man with a chop to the back of the neck. He fell in a crumpled heap onto the ground in front of Ryuzetsu. "Sorry about that, Missy. I needed evidence to support my opinion that you are the real deal in your plans to escape Hazukijo. And don't try to deny my words," he said in response to her opening mouth. "The prison walls have ears and unlike some." He cast an unfavorable glance filled with scorn and derision at his previous comrades who were moaning in pain or were unconscious. "I can actually hear. So, I want in. In return, I can get you safe haven in several of my safe houses scattered across the elemental nations and possibly train the two of you for the war one can feel on the rise in my weary bones." A recognizing glint shined in her eyes as she recognized the man in front of her. You're supposed to be dead," Ryuzetsu uncharacteristically yelled at the sheepish man. The proverbial cogs spun in Ryuzetsu's mind as the chances of success further increased with this legend's assistance along with his experience. "Supposed to. But as you can see, I'm not." Sadness seemed to lace his words before grim determination set in. "Do you agree to my proposition? There are no drawbacks other than what certain officials might hear." Despite the open-ended threat, Ryuzetsu knew the decision she would make. With a nod from the white-haired Kunoichi, the man spoke up once again, cheering at his good luck. "Excellent. Now then, let's go assist your boyfriend in his battle. He's not going to have any sort of paradise facing Michiro, Gant and Ichiro as you can see," he grimly stated, filing for later notice how Ryuzetsu didn't show any outward emotion towards his boyfriend comment, only choosing to fixate on dissecting and countering the three men's individual styles. He shrugged. Could be she didn't hear with those eyes of hers studying their fighting styles too. Naruto panted heavily, spitting out coagulated blood from his mouth as he studied the triplets who named themselves Michiro, Gant and Ichiro. Weak, Gant, the bald Junin spat out as he prowled towards Naruto. Michiro snorted, his one arm bruised black and blue pointed at the panting blonde. Huh. You only think so because you haven't been hit by him yet. See what I have to deal with. A one-word man and the other that constantly fights the other in words or by fists. Ichiro sighed. Screw this, he's mine. Gant bellowed before breaking into a charge that both of his comrades roared at him to stop. Naruto smirked before swatting the outstretched left fist away from himself and striking the armpit of Gant, managing to stop the right uppercut in its tracks and slammed his fist in Gant's stomach. Gant doubled over, gasping for the air expelled from his lungs before catching a knee in the face. A snap resounded in the air as Gant's nose snapped with blood already spurting out onto Naruto's knee. Naruto attempted to move only to find he couldn't as Gant held onto his leg with both arms in an iron-tight grip. No moving for you now, you wretch. Ichiro, get this runt. With pleasure. Ichiro simply sighed and complied. The two men charged forward and moved with the intent to kill. Despite their speed, their attacks were deflected with simplistic ease from Ryuzetsu and the gray-haired shinobi and were knocked backwards several feet from Naruto, who barely got out of Gant's loosening grip. As he jumped back, Gant fell forward in unconsciousness. Well then, I didn't expect you to be able to knock the 3 elite Junin from Kumo out. Good job, kiddo. In between pants, Naruto replied, Who are you, old man? He responded with amusement. Why, I'm hurt you didn't notice me, Naruto-kun. I would have thought you'd have noticed the obvious similarities between me and my own son, Kakashi Hatake. Seeing Naruto's eyes widen was obviously what he was looking for. Yes, I am Tsukumo Hatake, the so-called White Fang of Konoha. The fox inwardly smirked at this new development. Very interesting indeed. But you're dead, aren't you? Naruto exclaimed, ignoring how the two men began retreating as guards finally began pulling into the courtyard. Tsukumo's eyes hardened. No, and I intend on getting my revenge on the one who is responsible for imprisoning me in this hell. Tsukumo shrugged. His lips quirked upwards, the tense atmosphere ending. Regardless, you have some assistance for your future ventures. The White Fang waved goodbye once before disappearing in the throng of guards, taking the gang members away, the tanned man and the gang leader vanishing in the crowd. At least you can take care of yourself in a fight fairly well despite the odds. Ryuzetsu huffed as she put his arm around her neck and heaved him up from the ground while ignoring the medics and guards swarming the area. At least the guards are ignoring us. Naruto preened at her roundabout praise, even more so at her next few words. Keep up the good work and there might be a reward later on. Her lips quirked at how he smiled widely as she inwardly marveled at how easily he began to slip in between the chinks in her proverbial armor. I can't fathom why I'm feeling so ambient towards him, but it isn't such a bad feeling to be close to another person that isn't entirely about business. Nighttime. Naruto. Moroi hissed quietly at the slowly rousing blonde. Wake up, Naruto mumbled at the coat-wearing Kumo nin. Deep blue eyes shot open when Moroi kicked the blonde's ribs rather weakly and immediately jumped up, already in his unique taijutsu style taught to him by the toads. The fight earlier told him mountain loads about using the style religiously. What the hell? It's nice to know you'll get up when I use force to do so. Moroi dryly commented at the glaring blonde. Now let's hurry it up, we're meeting in Ryuzetsu's cell. Moroi sighed when Naruto blankly stared at him. For Tsukumo, remember? Understanding lit up in ocean blue eyes. Oh, why didn't you say so? Kumo nin resisted the urge to face palm at the blonde's antics. While ignoring the blonde, Moroi quickly took a cursory glance outside the wooden bars of the cell and ushered Naruto out, placing a weak genjutsu over the cell to show a sleeping Naruto. They hastened their pursuit to Ryuzetsu's cell, Naruto using the minutest amounts of chakra to muffle footsteps against the flooring, also serving to accelerate his running pace. Good, you two are finally here. Ryuzetsu intoned softly as the two nin slipped into the cell, Moroi already in the process of setting a genjutsu before Tsukumo rose from the shadows and interrupted the process. Don't bother with that. I've already done so and made it so any noise will seem to be snoring from the general area we're residing in. Moroi goggled at how the living legend was able to use such a genjutsu with precision on top of having the Tenro, heavenly imprisonment, working in the background to seal chakra. Naruto was simply dumbfounded at how he was able to even use a complex genjutsu with the seal even with the control needed to cast the jutsu. Ryuzetsu's lips quirked upwards for a brief moment at Moroi and Naruto's expression before receding into a neutral fixture. The reason we're here is for two specific reasons, both involving Tsukumo Hitaki. Hitaki simply grinned at her. The first is two-pronged. Assurance that you are who you say you are, and why your death was staged if you are who you claim to be. Once that assurance is made, we will progress to the second reason. Whoa, Ryuzetsu-chan really is cautious in accepting allies. First Moroi and now Tsukumo Hitaki. Naruto frowned, but if he's a Hitaki and Kakashi's father no less, why didn't he mention him even once in passing? Maybe it's because of this staged death that keeps being bantered about. After reassuring himself, Naruto focused in on Tsukumo's words. Smart woman you are. Tsukumo cordially complimented Ryuzetsu, who remained unperturbed at the compliment. I can't count how many times my comrades were foolish enough to accept an enemy ninja's words, only to be cut down like cattle when their attention drifted. His facial expression turned pensive only momentarily. Very well, I'll humor your request. You know of the chakra unique to Hitaki clan members? Purple-rimmed eyes closed before opening, staring intently upon Tsukumo for several moments before curtly nodding. Then watch and learn youngsters. Slowly, wisps of silvery white like tendrils extended from his fingertips before disappearing with a huff. Seeing the shocked expression of Naruto made him chuckle. Not every day you see an inmate of Hozukijo visibly manipulate and display their chakra How did you manage that, old man? Naruto eagerly awaited his response. Well, the suspense built until even Ryuzetsu was curious enough to have the desire to know. It's a secret method of training the Hitaki employ. After roaring in laughter from their dumbstruck and angered expressions, he added in a consoling tone, if we get out of here, relatively unscathed, I will be willing to assist and even train you youngsters for the duration of the storm brewing in the distance. After seeing the troubled look in Ryuzetsu and Moroi's eyes cemented further in Naruto's mind that war was imminent and unavoidable. Even the slowest of shinobi and kunoichi in Hozukijo noticed the ominous clouds roiling in the distance, slowly closing in from the distance. Continue, Tsukumo-san. Ryuzetsu held out an arm to forestall Naruto's comment and glanced once at him to still any further comments for the moment. The graying, older shinobi dramatically sighed at Ryuzetsu while ignoring the honorific added to his name, of course, only you would be able to subdue your boyfriend. Ignoring the spluttering of Naruto, the chuckling of Moroi and the most minute of eye twitches from Ryuzetsu that signified something dangerous about to occur, he continued on with upturned lips that quickly lowered into a fierce scowl in between sentences, that should show proof of who I am. The reason for me residing in Hozukijo has died along with the rotten son of a bitch that slammed my ass in here for refusing to complete the mission. He snarled the entirety of the last sentence, only lessening the harsh tone at the end of his tirade. Accepting his silence at the end of his tirade, Ryuzetsu took control of the momentary lapse of conversation. Very well, Tsukumo-san. She nodded with grace before Tsukumo snorted. Stop saying my name with san. I'm not to be respected by those who haven't for any reason other than the whispers of fools who spin yarn about the skills of the enemy. Tsukumo rather forcefully stated. Once more Ryuzetsu nodded acquiescently to the graying man who sat down in the shadows. Very well, Tsukumo-san. Tsukumo gritted his teeth and refrained from continuing as it would do nothing except fuel her amusement from the upwards quirking lips that he caught Naruto continually glancing at. Interesting. He inwardly grinned to himself. Infatuation Maybe not, but it seems like he must be something close to her to stare so intently. Now that the first reason for this meeting is met, we can proceed to the second, informing Tsukumo of our current plans. I already know the entire plan. Tsukumo interjected with a knowing smirk. At the dumbfounded glances of the trio, Ryuzetsu included, he added, it's a wonder at how easily you can maneuver around the innards of Hozukijo when no one thinks to look in the correct place. How did he manage to escape my, albeit limited, sensor abilities under a genjutsu where the same restrictions apply to him for hours on end? Ryuzetsu marveled at the skill of the White Fang exhibited in overhearing the strategizing her, Naruto and Moroi partook in. Inwardly, she marveled at how lucky they really were to gain the skills of Tsukumo Hitaki on their side for their flight and subsequent war efforts. However, one doubt remained in her mind. One that unnerved her to no end, that she murmured more to herself than anyone else. If you were able to escape my notice, was there anyone else who managed to? Moroi finally spoke up at that point. If that's the case, then we will need to hasten our plans instead of waiting another week. We have, at most, 2 days' time, which I suggest we take to recuperate from your little courtyard smackdown. We haven't been listened into. There were no peeping ears. Both Naruto and Tsukumo stated at the same time, both staring at each other in shock and amusement respectively. And how do you know that, Naruto? Moroi asked in humor. Was it somehow an affect of absorbing a portion of a stronger being's chakra? Actually, yeah, how do you know? Naruto responded with a baffled expression on his face. How did Moroi guess that Naruto taking Kyuubi's power would give him an unintended affect of being able to proverbially sniff out ill intent? I mean, you three already knew I hold the Kyuubi, but when I took a portion of his power for my own, it gave me a side effect that allowed me to sniff, he shrugged, out ill intentions from those around me. I have to be in my Biju mode to be able to sense all forms of emotions. Ryuzetsu blinked at the information. That's amazing actually. Naruto preened under her compliment before she faintly smiled at him before it disappeared, leaving Moroi and Tsukumo staring at each other with a silent conversation being traded in a lightning-quick transaction. Did you just see what I saw? Yeah, is it just me, or does Naruto seem to be rather attached to Ryuzetsu? Not just you. It alternated from Moroi to Tsukumo as they began chuckling. Alright little Ryu-chan, Naruto-chan, why don't we catch up on some much-needed recuperation time? Tsukumo suggested with a fiendish grin that Moroi seconded, ignoring the unnerving and, quite frankly, disconcerting glare from Ryuzetsu. I agree. Besides, little Naru-chan and Ryu-chan need some alone time. Moroi grinned before it turned into a fearful expression as both Naruto and Ryuzetsu glared at him. I say we break his legs first. Hold him down for me and I'll do worse. My pleasure, Ryuzetsu. Naruto evilly grinned at Moroi, lunging at the Kumo Nen. That night, the snores were particularly loud before suddenly quieting in that section of the prison. 2 days later. Are you ready for this, Naruto? Ryuzetsu mouthed to the blonde several days after the fallout of the fight subsided. The time resting left Naruto entirely healed up, Ryuzetsu in proper enough condition to fight, Tsukumo being familiarized with the plans laid out, and Moroi actually getting much needed sleep. The blonde nodded once imperceptibly before being carted away to solitary confinement for a stint of 7 days, with a chortling foreman following closely behind. Once he was shoved, quite forcefully, into the tiny smooth stone cell, he immediately sat cross-legged and entered the mindscape to work out another deal with the fox. What is it, Naruto? Kyuubi sneered to the unperturbed blonde who merely sat on the ground in front of the cage. I want to propose another deal. One that I've been hoping would be possible with your help should my sage mode not cut it in this upcoming fight. Naruto finally spoke up after several moments' deliberation. At the serious words, Kyuubi's interest was piqued. Anytime his container was serious, it always ended in something interesting to pass the monotony of time in the sewer. I'm listening. Is it possible to use natural chakra to fuel the Biju mode, making a hybrid sage, Biju mode? Thinking about it for several moments left the kitsune murmuring under his breath before finally responding. What you're suggesting is damn well impossible. He swatted his tail violently against the gate to forestall the upcoming complaints from Naruto before snarling, silence ninja. Now, as I was saying, it is damn well impossible to accomplish without both parties willingly working in tandem through the seal as a medium. I would have to mix the natural chakra in your chakra coils that contain the power you stole from me for you to be able to use a mode similar to what you are proposing. Not only that, I would have to also willingly take in natural chakra through the seal while you are fighting to sustain the hybridized mode, which brings me to my question. Kyuubi's grin stretched to cataclysmic proportions as he caught the shocked gaze of his Jinchuriki. Now what are you going to do for me in return, little shinobi? I'll attempt to morph the landscape of the sewer here into something that you would prefer, along with entities fitting for that environment to play with when you are bored. Naruto diplomatically approached the situation, attempting to avoid stepping on any feet. Pause. Ah ha 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 ha. Kyuubi roared in amusement, and for a moment, Naruto feared Kyuubi would decline the proposal. For a worthless ninja, you certainly pass the dull monotony of my existence in this prison. Very well, I will go along with this little agreement provided you follow up on your end of the bargain and provide me with more amusing entertainment as you have been. Kyuubi eagerly began descriptively describing exactly how he wanted the mindscape to appear, a graveyard wreathed in crackling flames that circled in a hazy line that never dissipated, moonlight shining down on the aforementioned flames giving them an ethereal sheen to them. From the graves arose faux appearances of shinobi, kunoichi and all of the biju that he either disliked or outright hated, each with a cohort of minions for Kyuubi to swat around. Naruto panted from the mental strain he exerted on transitioning the sewers to the graveyard of hell, groans of the deceased already beginning to unnerve the genin. There, that's finished. If you want to make them harder, then I'll allow you full reins to increase their skill level along with their abilities. Ha ha ha, Kyuubi sinisterly chuckled, leaving few parting words to the blonde. Once the time comes for you to leave the solitary confinement, inform me for the battle. Naruto took no prompting from the kitsune's final words before fleeing the mindscape, attempting to drown out the screams of the damned in the graveyard. Naruto sighed from inside the smooth stone cubicle known as solitary confinement. 6 days had passed and all he had for entertainment was watching Kyuubi go on a destructive frenzy against the mental constructs in the fiery graveyard, meditating with sage mode, conversing with Kyuubi, or replaying his memories. So far, watching Kyuubi proceed with a mental rampage was unappealing, so that was crossed out of the list for things to do. Meditating with sage mode and natural chakra was becoming tedious, rapidly so after doing so for the past 48 hours. After all, sensing the extremely faint, dim, and disturbingly bright and vast chakra signatures of the inmates of Hozukijo grew old when they were memorized. Conversing Kyuubi was a chore unto itself despite twig-like bridges being built between the two. It introduced a faint and frail camaraderie that was beginning to grow stronger, but at the moment, it was far from ideal. All remaining on the small list left Naruto with his memories. After several minutes' deliberation, he decided on one of the many conversations between him and Ryuzetsu. He unconsciously shivered at the thought of her. Just the air around her and the way she moved screamed of professionalism, yet that too seemed to dull somewhat over the weeks she and him had become sociable acquaintances and, should he dare to become presumptuous, one of her close and probably only friend. Flashback, 17 days ago, nighttime. Uzumaki-san, Ryuzetsu stated in a curt tone from the inside of his wooden cell. He immediately jerked up, fully awake at the intrusion she accomplished with little difficulty. She continued without so much as an eye twitch at his shock, "Do not worry about guards, as I have dealt with them for the night. They will not bother us. Now, it has come to my attention that it would be prudent to know each other to work in tandem to further our goals." Naruto nervously chuckled, slowly calming down when she gracefully sat down in the shadows of the room. "How do you want to start? Likes, dislikes, ambitions, dreams and specializations?" he offered. She nodded, bangs moving in tandem. "That sounds acceptable. We each provide 2 descriptions of each and we reserve the right to avoid one should we not want to elucidate on it. Maybe I should be serious here." Naruto thought as those piercing violet-purple ringed eyes studied him, not missing a single motion he did. "Alright," Naruto began, not bothering to hide any information to his comrade. "I like my toad summons and training to grow stronger. My dislikes are traitors and having to recover from injuries. My ambition I have is to..." A thought flashed by his eyes of Tsunade wearing the wide Hokage hat with white cloth cloaking all but the front of her face and the white and red robes denoting a shinobi's status as Hokage, her eyes staring down imperiously at him while passing judgment upon him. "Pass. My dream is to become strong enough to make my Two-san and Ka-san proud of me and make a life for myself. My specializations are Sage Mode, Rasengan and its variants, espionage and infiltration from my late sensei, Jiraiya." Ryuzetsu nodded thoughtfully as she absorbed the influx of information. "Informative," she commented. "Very well. My likes involve, but are not limited to, improving my current skill set and purveying the esoteric arts of wielding and collecting naginata. Dislikes include Kusagakure no Sato and Mui. Ambitions involve growing strong, killing Mui and an eventual defection of Kusagakure no Sato. Her eyes grew somber for all but the briefest of moments before returning to the piercing stare, making Naruto wonder whether he actually saw the brief emotion. My dreams are my own to pursue and my specializations are ninjutsu, kenjutsu in the form of a naginata, espionage, infiltration, assassination and my clan's kekai genkei, bloodline limit, that I never have needed to resort to for 10 years. If you don't mind me asking. Naruto began slowly, diplomatically in a way. It was closer to a bull trampoline in a china shop than what he intended though. What does your kekai genkei do exactly? If we're unlucky enough to be pressed into such a situation, I will reveal it then. Her lips quirked ever so slightly at his attempt at diplomacy. It was endearing in an odd way that she was worthy of such notice from the blonde. And try to act yourself rather than be something you are not. Diplomacy is not your strong suit. Ryuzetsu stated with amusement, lacing her words, inwardly entertained at his relieved expression. Since we're on the subject, what is Kusagakure no Sato like anyways? My sensei never got around to infiltrating that village with me. Naruto actually pouted, nearly making her chuckle and sigh in exasperation. How can someone pout at not getting to infiltrate a great shinobi village? It's very plant related. Ryuzetsu hedged before huffing lightly at his expectant expression. Really, if it were anyone else, she would have incapacitated them by this point at the least. Only sheer luck that he was so amusing was keeping her from causing due injury to the blonde. It's hidden amongst a vast copse of trees, situated amidst long shoots of untended grass. Due to the forest it resides in, the patrols are amongst the canopy, giving a bird's eye view of anything that rustles the shoots of grass. Does that satisfy your curiosity enough to drop the conversation? Not really. Of course it isn't. Ryuzetsu sighed lightly, inwardly acting the exact opposite of what she was portraying, actually enjoying the conversation in a way. She might actually enjoy his company if he became trained. Flashback end. Naruto smiled with amusement at how he and Ryuzetsu bantered back and forth. At that moment he noticed that the room had little light in it, only the ethereal moonlight glow lighting the small stone cubicle. I guess that passed the time rather quickly. Oi, Kyuubi, he mentally roared at the seemingly lethargic fox. Damn fox always became lazy after a destructive fit. What is it, brat? Tomorrow's the day all bets are off. Are you ready for some good fights? HMMPH. You think I'm not ready for a fierce battle? Just tell me when you need me to begin channeling through the seal, and remember, give me a damn good show because this shit will be a pain in the ass to channel without risking death. Naruto shivered at the bloodthirsty tone of the fox, inwardly thankful that none of it was directed at him, for the most part of course. The fox seemed almost neutral to him now, and it was beginning to worry Naruto. Wasn't the Kyuubi no Yoko supposed to be a being of malevolent chakra, trickery, and have such a way of words that it could convince an opposing army to jump off of a cliff if it wasn't wanting to simply decimate them with tail swipes? Inside the seal the great nine-tailed fox was laying on a patch of embers amongst the vast, eternally dusk forest around the graveyard he had created with the intent to hunt and kill creatures long since extinct inside. His hold on me has nearly dissipated. Naruto Uzumaki. The fox snarled at the thought of the orange-masked individual controlling him, visibly calming when he stated his cantainer's name. The blonde Gaki was growing on the Biju, not that he would ever admit it, even under duress of the strongest kind, at the very least warranting a neutral camaraderie. The storm is brewing and nearly upon us. I wonder just how we'll stand at the end of it. Whether we stand at the epicenter or whether we fall prey to the monsoon is up to you, brat, but I'll be damned if I don't ensure we are the last ones standing. 3:10 p.m. So, little Ryu-chan, all we're waiting on is for Naruto? Tsukumo asked with a grin on his face at getting a twitch from Ryuzetsu. Yes, that is what we're waiting for, Hitaki-san. Ryuzetsu stated, inwardly sighing at the man's attempts to rile her up. It was truly vexing to say the least. A hum came from Moroi. He should be getting out soon, within the next 30 minutes or so. They were all situated on a roof, one of the tallest in the prison, staring down the courtyard. As usual, the gates opened, showing yet another shipment of fresh inmates. Do we all know our roles for what's going to happen? Both fair-haired companions nodded, one sharp and the other calm, relaxed even. Of course, brat, I'll be helping you whipping up these wretches into a riot the likes of which the guards here have never seen while little Ryu-chan does her few insignificant parts with Naruto. Ryuzetsu snorted at the White Fang's seemingly light explanation, inwardly debating whether she could hurt him without putting the mission at risk. Her parts were of incredible importance, especially of what was to come. But, Moroi cut in with a frown, the guards seemed to have grown agitated somehow. Look over there, he pointed towards the courtyard where guards moving to and fro, more being out and about than what was expected. That can't be good for our plans. No, it can't be, but we can easily turn it around in our favor. All it takes is a few modifications to our plans. Well. A wry smirk found its way onto Tsukumo's face that Ryuzetsu did not like one bit, which means little Ryu-chan gets to do a wee bit more work, especially in the underground involving the gate's locking mechanisms. The former Anbu from Kusagakure no Sato sighed in exasperation yet did not contest the change. Tsukumo did have her respect despite being an annoying man. The only question remaining is whether we all stick together after this is all done. Will we go opposite ways, or shall we stick together for the aftermath of what will come? Moroi wondered aloud. Shrugs came from the other two. I was already planning on defecting from Kusagakure no Sato. I'm exasperated for having to fight for another's beliefs I have no wish to be a part of. I said I'd train these two gaki, so I damn well will follow up on my word. Other than that, I need to obtain my sword, the White Fang, back if I'm going to be of any prolonged assistance. Besides, I'm not exactly sure Konohagakure would like the dirty secrets dug up from me returning. Tsukumo sighed, wondering where his sword was hidden and how his son was after the long years of last seeing him. Damn that man to the lowest pits of fucking hell. The Hitaki inwardly snarled. Moroi nodded in response. I'll see about something I can do for all of you, but I can't make any promises. I'll most likely be put on the front lines for Kumogakure no Sato. Maybe I have a method that could work out for both you and my soon-to-be brats in training in the long run. Tsukumo grinned widely at both Moroi's smirk and Ryuzetsu's scowl. Just need to persevere through today, then he can be punished. Ryuzetsu's sudden smirk set warning bells off over Tsukumo's head. Maybe not the best idea to screw around with her, but so worth it in the end with Naruto involved. What's the method, Tsukumo? Moroi asked inquisitively, breaking up both sinister thoughts and warning bells alike. If the method was worth it and could work, it could be a definite boon to their efforts and communication, not to mention any of the other perks that it came with. Well, as Tsukumo continued, both Moroi and Ryuzetsu smiled in their own way, a wide smile showing bleach-white teeth and an upward quirk of lips. 20 minutes later, 3:30 p.m. Ryuzetsu, Tsukumo uttered with confidence filling his voice, confidence that was gained by tens of years of fierce and unadulterated combat, go. In an instant she leapt to action, descending the tower. Moroi, the White Fang grinned with ferocity to his companion who was intent on showing the same respect. Let's have some fun then, shall we? Despite not seeming as professional as how he acted with the former Anbu, he felt no need to hide his excitement to his fellow comrade in arms. Oh ho ho, I thought you would never ask. Moroi's face split, showing bleach-white teeth. Like all men, he wasn't one to shy away from a good brawl, and this was an opportunity that he would gladly partake. Besides, it is good for simple stress relief. 3:30 p.m. Mui allowed himself a moment of weakness, sighing from exhaustion inside the walls of his office. After Naruto Uzumaki became imprisoned in Hozukijo, it seemed as if the events of the outside world died down after the blonde was incarcerated. In all actuality, it disturbed Mui. On the other hand, it gave him a measure of security at the same time. His plans could continue unfettered and undisturbed without risk of conflict knocking on his doorstep, yet that still left a niggling feeling in the back of his mind. How important could the blonde be if the war seemingly fell apart just before his incarceration? It didn't matter after all, he mused, pacing the office walls. He stopped in front of the balcony overlooking the sea and produced a letter from the folds of his burgundy coat. Its broken seal was not of only one major hidden village, but of multiple. In fact, it held all 5 of the seals from their individual cage no less. It appears they have come to reclaim a prize that was mistakenly forfeited. And have even threatened myself and my prison in the process of attempting to reclaim it. A siege would merely crumple itself against the impregnable walls of Hozukijo, and the thought of Hozukijo falling would never cross Mui's mind. After all, it has stood against the assault of time itself since the Great Clan Wars. And the shinobi were not as strong as they once were. However, the guards were also not what they once were, the exception being perhaps only one or two. In an instant all doubts were washed away against the storm of the impending future. After all, he held all the cards in his corner, and he had some time to play them. Then the unmistakable sound of combat reached his ears. Several moments later, he then heard loud footfalls before the door slammed open. "Sir," the guard saluted before continuing. "We need help. The prisoners are rioting and we don't have the strength to hold them back." "Very well. I shall assist in putting down the rebellion momentarily. Fall back and guard the entrance of the atrium where the cells are located." Mui dismissed the guard back to handling the riot as his mind began breaking down the situation and prioritizing what needed to be done. Only several prisoners are capable of mustering a riot of this magnitude. However, this riot is the perfect ruse in order to activate the box, or to destroy it. With a flourish of his cape, he proceeded down to the depths of the prison with a clone left behind to prepare for the coming battleground. 15 minutes is perhaps all I have. You ready, furball? Naruto asked with a wide grin and mood in good shape from the depths of his mind. After all, why wouldn't he be in good spirits? He sensed the riots beginning, Ryuzetsu approaching, and the plan was already being initiated. Being released from the prison was only a bonus at this point. Impudent whelp, the Kyuubi's growl held none of its usual anger, only bloodthirsty anticipation. There still was some anger at being called furball, but it was overshadowed by the opportunity for a potential bloodbath. And Naruto did notice it, if his grin widening was any indication. "I am always ready for combat and this is no exception, you damned brat. Don't leave me waiting for a good show." Kyuubi grinned in such a way that his dagger-like teeth shone in the unnatural dimness of the graveyard. "Then let's get this party started." Fading laughter echoed through the trees as Naruto prepared what little was needed. Almost as soon as the blonde opened his eyes, he summoned several clones to gather natural chakra while he replenished his reserves. Fortunately, it was not much as he finished just before the locking mechanism on the door spun, revealing his savior, who appeared worse for wear and guards knocked unconscious in a pool of their blood. "Took ya long enough?" Cerulean eyes widened as he catalogued the injuries. "What happened, Ryu-chan?" It was an impossibility that her wounds came from the guards. No, they were far too severe for that. Not to mention the fact that she seemed to radiate weariness. Her clothing was torn and dirty, face caked with grime, sweat, and coagulating blood that mostly came from what little remained of her heavily bandaged left ear. Her arms covered from abrasions that only came from being thrown on and around sand. That didn't include legs, torso, superficial cuts, and bruising. "Kami-sama, did you go through a damn meat grinder?" Naruto swore to himself as he darted out of the cubicle. The blonde quickly grabbed his injured companion, ignoring her undignified squawk of protest that only cemented the thought further in his mind that she was in bad shape. "Ryuzetsu never shows as much emotion or exhaustion. We don't have time to waste on such superficial." Yeah, that didn't sit well with Naruto. "Shut up for a moment." His interruption served to only infuriate the former Anbu. That is, before she felt warmth spread throughout her body and fatigue fleeing her body. Violet-ringed eyes widened in shock as her body slowly grew alit with deep forest green chakra. Thoughts of ripping into the blonde were replaced in turn for analytically studying what Naruto was accomplishing. But that has to be impossible. Her thoughts sifted through the information provided in close to an instant. Naruto-san's chakra is far too vast for medical purposes, even including the amount that is currently unsealed by the Tenro, has not stated he has any experience with medical procedures, and fluctuates far too often to be of medicinal usage unless. A quick glance at toad-like pupils squinted in heavy concentration solidified her explanation and only seemed to further her irritation. "Ah, that explains the impossibility at least. With natural chakra and what I understand of successfully utilizing it, it becomes the dominant source of chakra at his disposal," pointing towards the conclusion that his control over is more than adequate for medical ninjutsu. "And it seems to be as potent as I understand of it, using so very little of it for the result it's giving off. Now, Slowly the chakra faded away and Naruto took a cursory glance over onto his comrade with a satisfied nod. Bruises looked to be days, even weeks old in several places. Cuts, scrapes, and abrasions didn't appear to his enhanced eyesight, only irritated and reddened skin in their place. Her skin regained color, and her face did not appear to be as pallid as before. Not to mention her chakra reserves seemed to be replenished. Ah, he sheepishly grinned at his work. Better than before. Explain. Ryuzetsu brutally cut through his sheepishness. Why was I not informed of your skill in medical ninjutsu before now? As an Anbu, she despised not knowing of her comrade's limitations, strengths, and weaknesses. It could equate to death for herself, her team, and risk a mission's success. Despite the current plan's importance, this situation could not wait. Especially if Naruto withheld any other important skills that could make or break their plans. Not to mention that it somehow hurt that she wasn't privy of that skill. Blackened eyes blinked in confusion at her cold, hard tone before he realized the implications. An eyebrow raised itself in impatience and fire spreading in violet eyes spurred his explanation. I didn't know I could do that until right now. The eyebrow slowly lowered itself as her face grew expectant. Sorry. I saw that you were exhausted as hell and injured, not to mention I've had the basics pounded through my head from several Konoha nins. But I've never actually attempted it because I never had the right chakra control until now with Sage Mode. Wisely he kept from uttering that she had a very real chance of turning into a stone statue while he was healing her. Yet he held his tongue and kept his head held high. It was, however, of the hardest things to do. Keeping his head up involved keeping his eyes locked upon Ryuzetsu's roving eyes that seemed to catch everything in their gaze. Finally, a soft sigh left her lips at the conundrum facing her. On one hand, she could handle the problem as how she would in the past countless times, quick, brutal, to the point, and alienate the blonde in the process. The other hand, however, was one that only recently surfaced with the introduction of the blonde in her life. Explaining what he did wrong, continue with the mission which, previously, she would never condone in their line of work, and wouldn't risk hurting the blonde. Ryuzetsu chose to compromise. Words began to flow from her quickly in a fierce tone, as she had wasted already a good 2 minutes. What was done right now I never would have accepted in the past because of either end, something could have horribly gone wrong. You either could have unsuccessfully performed the medical ninjutsu and injure myself further, or you have lied as to your skills which could potentially compromise a mission. I am not yet finished. Cerulean eyes blinked in confusion as Ryuzetsu continued in a far more moderate tone, as stated, I never would have accepted this in the past. However, you've made me softer in that regard and your actions were done out of concern and worry from what I can discern. Her voice grew softer still. For that, I thank you. Because of your circumstance and actions, the mission will go smoother as a result. Naruto grinned widely at her words and knew that his relationship was not ruined, previously worried at having screwed up with Ryuzetsu. Okay. He grinned, rubbing calloused hands together in anticipation as the duo ran out of the winding and confusing catacombs. Now that that is behind us, what happened on your end? A slight frown tugged at Ryuzetsu's lips as the sounds of fighting grew louder by the second. The gate levers were guarded heavier than what was expected. 3:38 p.m. Flashback, 7 minutes ago, 3 hours 31 minutes and 9 seconds p.m. She quietly huffed in annoyance at the placement of the gate levers, the only emotion being shown. Why did they have to be underground in the catacombs? It was the worst possible place for an attacker to be in actually, which was probably one of the few reasons it was so far out of reach. Traps, ambushes, and several small outposts were littered along the twisting and never-ending tunnel walls and flooring. Easily defensible, and hidden in a location away from the gate that would be impossible to find should the correct knowledge not be readily available. Ryuzetsu thought analytically, but should that information become available, it would crumple against a squad of 5 shinobi of Chunin level. Provided the guards are sufficiently occupied of course. After taking several quick turns, she slowed her pace. This should be the last turn. Within a matter of moments, the tunnel turned from dimly lit and mostly empty to a shining bright cavern with 11 heavily armored and armed guards covering both exits. Walls shuddered for a moment before closing doors where the guards appeared from. Use extreme caution, she's dangerous, even if she can't use chakra. One of the guards, a woman that appeared to be a captain of the guards, barked out loudly over the din of marching in front of Ryuzetsu. "We are under orders to capture her if at all possible." While the petite yet decently built captain appeared competent, in the former Anbu's eyes she wasn't even close to competency. And she intended to capitalize on each of the blonde captain's mistakes. Mistake 1. Not allowing the guards to immediately apprehend her. Even if they had orders against killing her, they could easily incapacitate her by their alone sheer numbers if they caught her by surprise. But that attempt was wasted and was now against them due to the tunnel walls being so closed in, only allowing 2 of the smallest to stand shoulder to shoulder. Her training was far worse than 4 versus 1 at any given moment. And she held no compunction against killing them in the meantime. Mistake 2. Holding a naginata so loosely in her grasp and standing far too closely to the former Anbu. Especially if it was specifically shortened for combat enclosed in areas with a blade on either end of the handle. In an instant Ryuzetsu darted forward, carefully avoiding any chakra use, and immediately ripped her weapon of choice from the woman, viciously gutting the shell-shocked captain. Suffice to say, Ryuzetsu quickly dispatched the captain with little difficulty. Mistake 3. Wear heavier armor. The guards stood in silence and shock as they watched the small in stature inmate brutally gut their beloved second-in-command, Shirasaki, before desecrating the corpse in their eyes by ripping the blade up and out. With a cry of outrage, the assault began. 1 dead, 0 incapacitated, 10 left. Sliding away from a sword thrust on the dirt-coated cobblestone flooring, she knocked the tachi out of a monstrous guard's grasp with one end of the naginata. Momentarily following was his legs in the opposite direction, sheared off from underneath him with a reverse swing. Quickly spinning the naginata to avoid any nasty surprises, she had killed their captain, so perhaps they didn't care about their commands. Ryuzetsu leapt to her feet while narrowly bending to the right at the last second to avoid impalement from several blades, 1 tanto, the rest wakizashi. Her shirt ripped, showing the sharpness of their blades, along with the shallow cuts along her flank. 1 dead, 1 incapacitated. 9 left. Heavily armored and sharpened weapons. Ryuzetsu thought in annoyance as she instantaneously measured up the guard in front of her, far too armed for my tastes. It only made more work for herself, especially the armor that the guards seemed to have. While it was possible to cut through it, it wasn't worth the effort. And without chakra, it most definitely was not. The guard in front of her crumpled to the ground in a heap when her right leg shot out and struck at the side of the brown-haired guard's right knee. A sickening pop left the guard kneeling while Ryuzetsu used the momentum from the kick to viciously stab the guard towering behind her along his neck. Blood spurted as the carotid was opened, before the brunette kneeling lost his head from the same blade that killed his tall comrade. 3 dead, 1 incapacitated. 7 left. 3 hours 32 minutes and 17 seconds p.m. With 3 comrades dead and 1 as good as dead, the rest of the guards realized just how much danger the blood-covered inmate in front of them truly was. We just had to hold out a few minutes longer for the commander. The gate wall must not fall. A cry filled Ryuzetsu's ears as she watched the demoralized soldiers regain their previously waning confidence. Blood dripped onto a puddle in front of her from the naginata as she slid into a stance with the handle tucked underneath her arm, legs spread evenly out. While doing so, she processed just what the significance of their words amounted to as she was attacked from the front and back. After all, if they were so confident of their so-called commander, after seeing just a brief showcasing of her skills, if Anbu taught her one thing, it was never to underestimate your enemy. This fight had to end. Now. But what was worrying her in the back of her mind was the simple fact of why they were so concerned with the gate. There wasn't an impending attack as far as she knew, so why was there a higher guard detail? The attack on the gate was mainly a higher form of distraction. After all, the more distractions, the better for their plans. With an errant shake of her head, her hair shaking in tune, thoughts cleaned in an instant. Mulling over such items is better suited after a fight. 4 in front. 3 at my back, and it appears that the shock and demoralization has long since fled them. It seems the easy pickings weren't available to her anymore. The guards did not make the first move, so Ryuzetsu made it easy for them and in a feat of acrobatics, turned to face the 3 in back of her. The one in front was male, and subsequently tallest, ironically enough, a scar running laterally across his face with long black hair wielding dual wakizashi. The other two were of mixed gender, the one on the left being a crouched female with short red hair handling two shortened yari for indoors combat. On the other hand, the male to her right had no hair, yet his eyes were wide with heterochromatic eyes, held a tsurugi in front of him and a tanto in a reverse grip. All it took was a blink of their eyes to miss what she did next. "Get ready," the scarred soldier roared as she implemented her plan. Darting forward, she sprinted with a small trace of chakra for the necessary speed and leapt after the left wall, having just barely thrown the naginata past the scarred soldier, clipping his left shoulder, flipping over the right wakizashi. While the redhead's attention shifted towards flying naginata, Ryuzetsu rebounded off the wall and bypassed the scarred and injured soldier entirely. She twisted mid-air to the right to avoid a spear thrust that came from the redhead's right yari at the last second. Grasping the flying naginata directly underneath, she tilted it up to knock the other yari and followed its motion until the blade was positioned perfectly for a thrust that was summarily executed. 5 dead, 0 incapacitated. 6 left. 3 hours 33 minutes and 5 seconds p.m. Kai-san. The heterochromatic soldier growled in rage as his comrade fell prey to Ryuzetsu's dexterity and agility. He was already running towards Kai when the naginata was thrust through her eye and stabbed forward with his wakizashi, already following it up with a reverse-gripped swing from his tanto. It was his misfortune that she had already landed by the time he was within striking distance. Ryuzetsu already knew that any soldier would most likely charge her when their comrade was cut down and already prepared for that specific probability, also considering the scarred soldier's assault backup as well. Consequently, she pivoted on her left foot to avoid steel impaling her abdomen while ripping out the naginata, parrying the dagger's backhanded strike before bringing down the unoccupied naginata blade down. Armor plating and bone parted easily as the heterochromatic-eyed solider lost both arm and wakizashi in the swing. To the heterochromatic-eyed man, she truly embodied a devil in human skin, he thought in a shock-induced haze as he watched his arm fall to the ground. Her speed and strength, even without chakra, was second to none as evidence of the naginata being swung at incredible speeds. Her dexterity, agility, and combat prowess seemed to be unparalleled. "What are you?" he whispered before he was viciously kicked into his comrade from behind. It felt impossible to breathe now. His consciousness flickered as he watched her contend with the remaining 3 soldiers. When would their commander finally arrive? Gently, he felt himself being picked up and set to rest next to the wall. Takami. Takami vaguely recollected to be the man's name, said quietly, "Rest in peace. May your soul find solace in the afterlife." Feeling his eyes grow heavier by the minute, he found it a struggle to stay awake. He noticed another soldier fall to her prowess, but not without injuring her in the process, numerous shallow cuts along her arms. How did he manage to do so? She seemed too untouchable to Takami's weary eyes. A tremor racked the cavern. Another comrade was hewn. Takami's brightly colored eyes slowly dimmed as he left the world with a smile. "Commander's here. 9 dead, 0 incapacitated. 2 left. 1 commander left. 3 hours 33 minutes and 41 seconds p.m. Ryuzetsu did not account for 2 things at the exact moment the cavern rumbled while gutting the woman in front of her with a vicious twist. 10 dead, 0 incapacitated. 1 left. 1 commander left. One was the fact that the commander would be arriving so suddenly. The second was utterly shameful for her standards, forgetting about a single foe in the heat of battle. And she paid for that price. Dearly paid for it. The only saving grace was that the sudden tremor shook Kuro's aim to the point that only her ear was sheared off and her shoulder was sliced into lightly before jerking forward instead of her skull being cleaved in 2. Before she could retaliate with cold fury backing her retribution, lightly remarked with amusement, "You've done well enough to keep her attention occupied despite the costs, Kuro." A pale man of tall height, no taller than perhaps Sakumo, with cropped silver hair underneath a wide-brimmed hat that covered the majority of his face, the exception being a faint smirk on his face. The commander, for that was who she assumed him to be, stepped forward, black robes flapping as a breeze fluttered through the tunnel. "Fall back and assist your fellow comrades. I will take over from here." Ryuzetsu watched with Kuro retreat with cautious eyes, already tearing her tattered rag of a shirt to use as a makeshift bandage while applying due pressure. Finally, the makeshift bandage was set into place and the bleeding abated for the moment. Not to mention her equilibrium was affected dearly by the wound, and, already, her body was beginning to burn from injuries and fatigue after running, exertion, and fighting for several minutes. Violet eyes locked onto the physically unimposing commander. Already she was analyzing every little motion made, calculating her chances of winning with little to no injuries sustained, and weighing the risks and benefits of using what limited stores of chakra were available to her. The naginata was in her hands instantly at the commander's first step forward, and plans were established at that instant. "Welcome, little flower Anbu. Your looks are very distinct to me." "Ah." He snapped his fingers in recognition. "Am I correct in assuming your name is Ryuzetsu Seichi*? The famed Anbu of Kusagakure no Sato, known for the single-handed massacre of—" The commander raised an eyebrow as she interrupted. "Am I correct in assuming you are the commander of the armed forces of Hazukijo? Hit a touchy spot there, did I?" It pained her to admit it, but it did. She was not proud of her actions while in Anbu, most notable being the massacre of her own clan. Eyes narrowing to dangerous slits in anger became the only indication of rage she allowed herself to display. "Ah, I assume I did. But wait, where are my manners?" He gracefully threw his pure black robe off with a flourish, revealing the same armor as the guards, but with distinct differences. The greatest distinction being several softly pulsating seals randomly located on the samurai-like armor. The second distinction being that it gleamed brightly, even with the dimly torch-lit passageway. "You can refer to me as Maybor. Now prepare yourself, last scion of the house of Seichi, for the harbinger has arrived," he said before crashing both of his gauntlets together and charging towards Ryuzetsu at speeds that far outstripped the soldiers from before, perhaps on the low end of a junin. In that instant, she knew that to have any chance of winning, distance must be kept. For that focal point of her strategy, the naginata would be crucial in the small arena. Ryuzetsu parried the left armored gauntlet aimed for her left clavicle, batting away the right gauntlet with an expertly spin of the modified naginata with some difficulty, and prepared to thrust the spear forward. Yet she was caught off guard by his quick recovery and subsequent left hook pummeling into her torso. Ringed, Violet eyes widened in shock at his quick reaction before being launched at the opposite tunnel wall some 10 yards back. Already she felt the customary stiffness of a large bruise forming with a wince. It appears his strength is far beyond what the guards displayed. She watched Maybor stroll over to her with a calm and measured gait. "And I have foolishly lost my weapon when I allowed myself to be caught off guard." The former Anbu allowed a snarl of rage appear at the taunt. Is that all the last scion of Seichi can amount to? Anbu may have assisted in tempering her emotions and keeping them firmly under wraps, but the underhanded blow towards her clan was weathering her fraying patience. Arising from the cloud of dust, Ryuzetsu intoned the time-weathered aphorism of her clan: "If you truly wish to measure yourself the might of the last scion of Seichi so terribly, then come. Approach and fall into despair. Wail in agony as you crash against Seichi's unbreakable fortitude and indomitable strength." Settling herself into a fighting stance not used for years, she awaited Maybor's onslaught. A clap resonated from Maybor. "Finally you release shackles long since binding you to ineptitude, young scion." Now, a grin could be distinctly heard in his words. "Let us truly see if those shackles have shattered." Words having no more use, they turned to resolving themselves to who would walk out of the tunnel alive to see the light of another day. Armored gauntlets and elbow bashes flew at breakneck paces from Maybor. Kicks and debilitating strikes to chinks in the armor were all but visible from Ryuzetsu. From an onlooker's point of view, it was as if Maybor was a human tank, able to take strikes that would have crippled another man and returned them in equal strength. The evidence alone was evident in the craters all along their battlefield. However, once their look from Maybor shifted to Ryuzetsu, they would wrongly make the assumption that she was not human. Just by the graceful way she ducked, weaved, and spun around the vast majority of the strikes, she truly seemed inhuman, especially so after the modified naginata was retrieved. Very few actual hooks, punches, and elbows found purchase in her guard. Yet all throughout their fight, those curious runes inscribed onto Maybor's samurai armor glowed and flickered in tune with how he struck and shielded himself against a strike. They separated for a final time, appraising the damage done to one another. Ryuzetsu, at one point, was thrown like a rag doll against the rough, sand-covered cobblestone, resulting in numerous abrasions along with numerous bruises from the few strikes that snaked past her guard. Blood now caked the side of her face. Not to mention that her lack of perfect equilibrium contributed to most of the snaking strikes, and to the fact that she had black spots and occasionally appear in her vision. Regretfully, she did have to resort to brief bursts of chakra usage, and as a result, any more used would activate the Tenro. Maybor, on the other hand, stood tall despite blood dripping into a small puddle underneath him. It was pure, stubborn resolve that kept him conscious throughout the brutal beating received from Ryuzetsu. Dents and cracks littered his once gleaming and shining armor. Curiously, however, was not his resolve and fighting prowess that piqued Ryuzetsu's interest. No, it was that fact that his face remained hidden from view for the entirety of the fight. The wide-brimmed hat never flew off, nor was it struck once, leaving his most unknown face hidden from sight. "Ah, last scion. You have more than succeeded my hopes and wishes." A rattling cough escaped Mabor's lips and hand, spattering the ground with it. "I lost most grievously, yet I have accomplished my goal in life, to fight and die against one of the Seichi. Kill me now, or leave and complete your plans as I die here in these tunnels." He dismissed her with an errant wave of his hand, gaining a minute measure of respect from the former Anbu before she snuffed out his life. "That took far more out of me than I expected." She stumbled ever so slightly before regaining her balance. "I think I might take a few minutes to get to Naruto-san from here," she thought while destroying the gate lever with an errant wave of the now blunt naginata before discarding it. Ashamed too. It was a high-quality naginata. Balanced, finely honed, and unique to top it off. Ryuzetsu said aloud, frowning to herself. It was filled with cracks, dents, and the formerly finely honed edge was about as useful as a sledgehammer at the point it was at. At least solitary confinement is close. With a sigh, she went on her way. She still had Mui to kill after all. 3 hours 35 minutes and 59 seconds p.m. Flashback over. Naruto and Ryuzetsu. "Wow," Naruto said in shock. Ryuzetsu nodded in agreement, her weariness and fatigue next to nothing compared to what it was before. The duo ascended the tallest tower to Mui's office, easily overpowering any guard left that was not handling the riot on the staircase. "Remind me not to piss you off in the future." Ryuzetsu inclined her head, amusement dancing in her eyes, but was otherwise impassive, duly noted. "Of course, that hinges only upon if I can remember to do so before you incur my wrath." The blonde stood back in shock as he watched her enter the office and strolled towards the hidden chamber, hidden behind an inconspicuous bookcase. Did she just make a joke? Naruto shook his head at seeing her eyes morph so quickly from amusement to showing nothing really. "Nah, can't be. I must have been imagining her eyes changing." What he didn't realize was that she was impassive for 2 reasons. First, she wanted to be in control of her emotions while walking deep within enemy lines, especially against the bastard who she held a vendetta against. After all, being in control of one's emotions could mean life or death for one's team. The second was to keep herself from laughing aloud at his dumbstruck look. Now I understand why Hitaki-san finds enjoyment in playing around with people. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.